Item number 34, ACR 126. And item number 24, AB 2294, Assembly Member Block Petty Cabs. We're going to pull that also from today's agenda. We're going to be taking We're going to be taking testimony from 2 witnesses in support, 2 witnesses in opposition. Each one will have 3 minutes to speak. Other witnesses.
Credit for a minute and a half, don't they?
Huh?
They get extra credit for a minute and a half.
Yeah, they get an extra. Yeah, they get extra
You'll
credit.
be more likely to vote for it.
I'll be more likely to vote for it.
Let's not make short jokes.
Everybody gets a chance to say something. Would anybody in the audience like to make a?
A little feedback.
I think. Can the sergeant help us? We're turned up to maximum volume. Thank you.
That's just your powerful personality.
Please turn off your cell phones.
Is it radiation?
It's a seance.
We have some very humorous, before we were elected to the Senate, we were all comedians, That was before
we were elected.
Our first author will be Assemblymember De Leon. I think it's item number 6, AB 145. Welcome. We're going to start as a subcommittee. Welcome. We need one more. We need one more. You want to get sworn in? Is that it? You're a little early. You want to come over and you want to vote on your own bill?
He has a lot more sway with me now.
Welcome.
Mr. Chair, welcome. Good morning, Mr. Vice Chair, as well as prestigious members, honorable members of this very prestigious committee. I want you to know I've been waiting in the front row since 1:30 p.m. and I will continue to wait for you, Mr. Lowenthal, as long as you want me to wait.
As it should be. Now, please begin.
I want you to know that I know you and Mr. Huff are doing God's work on the Budget Conference Committee, so I don't envy you as a former member.
I would like to say I, too, would like to thank Senator Huff, who is a pleasure to serve with.
Thank you very much.
What are you going to say about Brandon?
I'm being put on the spot right now, Mr. Chair. Well, I will say this. I'll keep my comments very brief, as Mr. Huff had noted that there's a weighted formula system with regards to brevity. So I don't know if one vote stands for 1 vote and a quarter, but Mr. Chair, as well as Mr. Vice Chair, thank you for the opportunity to present AB 145. It's a very simple and straightforward measure. This bill seeks to address a gap in existing law relating to the subhauling of construction materials and implements safeguards that are very important to facilitate the timely payment of dump truck owners after the completion of construction jobs. As you know, the unemployment rate is through the stratosphere here in the state of California. Let me emphasize and underscore that for our dump truck operators here in the state of California, it is double that at the very least. Currently, only motor carriers of property are required to obtain written certification that the subcontractors hold, in fact, valid motor permits. What AB 145 does specifically is extends this mandate to construction trucking, quote-unquote, brokers who do not own dump trucks or are not acting in a motor carrier capacity when they are brokering for these types of services. This bill also seeks to address failure to pay issues that have arisen in this industry. Since dump truck owners do not have lien rights, they currently have little to no recourse if they are not paid for their services. AB 145 is sponsored by the California Dump Truck Owners Association, and there are representatives here to testify in support. I have here to my right, immediate right, obviously Mr. Brooks Ellison, as well as 2 individuals who are California dump truck owners who will, with your permission, Mr. Chair, let's say a few words. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Witnesses in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Brooks Ellison on behalf of the California Dump Truck Owners Association. I want to thank the Assembly member for carrying the bill and working with us. I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and your staff, and the Vice Chair and his staff for working with us, and all the stakeholders. We've worked a long time on this bill. It's pretty modest. what I'd like to do now is be able to answer any questions that you may have on the bill and ask Fred Recupero, who is an owner, to identify himself. He's part of the California Dump Truck Owners Association, Rob McLaren, who's the president, and we'll be happy then to answer any questions you have because, again, we are sensitive to that extra bonus points for time.
Other witnesses in support?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Fred Recupero. I'm a 39-year veteran of the dump truck business here in California. I started out as a single truck owner-operator, and now I'm a small fleet owner and a truck broker. We operate out of Banning, California, in Southern California.
My name is Robert McClernon. I'm from Sacramento. I started out also as a one-truck owner, went on to own a fleet. I'm currently the president of the CDTOA, and here to answer your questions.
What problems have you had? Why do we need this bill?
Well, in this industry, we have people that are getting into this industry and handle people's monies, and we have no recourse to fine them or deal with them if we don't get paid.
And that's happened to you?
That's happened to me and quite a few of our members, some in some sizable amounts, yes.
Thank you. Are there any other witnesses in support? Are there witnesses in opposition? Members of the committee?
Move approval.
Well, we don't have a quorum yet, but we
I'd
will.
love to move approval.
I'm with you in this.
And so is the chair. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. But we're going to wait until we have a quorum. Thank you. Would you like to close?
No, I just ask, this is a bipartisan measure, so respectfully ask for an aye vote once a quorum is established. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, as well as members.
Thank you, Mr. Assemblyman.
Hayashi is here. 7.
Who's next?
Hayashi is here.
Next is item number 7, Assemblymember Hayashi. Welcome.
Well, hello.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I'm here to present AB 498. This bill allows former prisoners of war the option to order a veteran's license plate and still be exempted from vehicle license and registration fees. Currently, ex-POW license plates with the letters POW are issued to ex-POWs seeking the vehicle license and registration fee exemptions. And while ex-POWs are proud of their military service, not all are comfortable advertising that they were a former prisoner of war. And the bill would allow ex-POWs the option to select a license plate that best recognizes their service. With me, I have the chairman of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States to testify in support of the bill.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm William Manus, Legislative Chairman, Veterans of Foreign Wars, Department of California, is sponsor of the bill. When the license plate bill for the ex-POWs was first put in, this business about stress was not considered at that time. We have all become much more familiar with it in recent past couple of years and some of the effects it can have. We know that these post-traumatic stress symptoms can reoccur over years after the incident has happened. The business of having an ex-POW license plate, it turns out, has put some people in a position of having these stress symptoms recur to them in a way that it really should not happen. This bill will help out the situation for those people. Not very many of them, but I think we do owe it to them for what they have been through in past years, that they be given some break on this. So that's why we're supporting the bill.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank you for your service to our country. And before we go any further, I'd like the secretary to please call the roll.
Lowenthal,
Here.
Huff,
Here.
Ashburn,
Present.
DeSaulnier,
Here.
Harmon, Kehoe, Oropeza, Pavley, Simidian.
We have a quorum. The quorum is established. Are there other witnesses in support? Are there any witnesses in opposition? Members of the panel, anybody wish to raise a question? The bill's been moved by Senator Ashburn. Assembly member, would you like to close?
I respectfully ask for a vote.
Will the secretary please call the roll?
Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, I. Huff.
Aye.
Huff, I. Ashburn. Ashburn, I. DeSaulnier. DeSaulnier, I. Harmon. Kehoe. Oropeza. Pavley. Pavley, I. Semidian. 5-0.
Bill has 5 votes. That's sufficient for passage, but we'll hold the roll open for the absent member.
Thank you very much.
Before we go on,
Mr. Chairman.
thank you. I'd like to go back to item number 9. Oh, no, it's not item number 9. It was item number 6, AB 145 De Leon. It's been moved by Senator Huff. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, I. Huff.
Aye.
Huff, I. Ashburn. Ashburn, I. DeSaulnier. DeSaulnier, I. Harmon. Kehoe. Oropeza. Pavley. Pavley, I. Semidian. 5-0.
There's 5 votes. That has sufficient votes for passage, but we're going to place the bill on call for the absent members. Next, I think Huber and also Assembly Member Jeffries, but Assembly Member Huber, I think, was.
Yeah. Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I believe you're
Chair
presenting AB 498? No. Oh, I'm sorry, 584. That's I asked you. 584. Now, if you'd like to, we just heard that one, but you can do that one more time. 584.
Thank you. AB 584 is one of those wonderful bills that comes out of the grassroots efforts of local constituents in my district. It is a district bill that applies only to Amador County. AB 584 seeks to allow the County of Amador and the cities of Jackson, Sutter Creek, and Amador City to establish a neighborhood electric vehicle transportation plan. The Amador Citizens for Transportation Options, and I have with me Bob Devlin, who represents that group, have been working with the county to consider transportation alternatives that would link the small and historic towns of Jackson, Sutter Creek, and Amador City. They have been working very hard to make sure that we get these kinds of options locally, and I do have him here to testify in support with the chair's permission.
Witnesses in support.
Okay, I'm Bob Devlin.
Can you speak into the microphone and introduce yourself?
I'm Bob Devlin with the Amador Citizens for Transportation Options. When we started looking at NEVs, neighborhood electric vehicles, for our county, we realized we're a little different. We're a rural area. So we looked around nationally. I Googled everything I could to find examples of how an NEV would work in an area like ours, because it had potential, but we didn't know how practical it was. So we purchased a GEM car. We drove it particularly in our target area, which is South Jackson, if those of you are familiar with Amador County, from South Jackson to Amador City, which is our historic 49er corridor. And we did come across some very unusual challenges, and so we ended up proposing some unusual solutions, which definitely don't fall within the confines of this current state NEV law, which is why we're here asking if we can be a rural testing ground. For example, we find that when NEVs and bicycles are on our 35-mile-an-hour roads, we don't have shoulders hardly anywhere in Amador County, so we stack up cars. So one of our solutions are special NEV bicycle turnouts, so we can get out of the way, let the cars go by, and safely get back on the roads. And so we have these novel solutions. We've got solar transit stations where people can take public transit, and as they enter our corridor area and get on an NEV that they own that's charged up for free or rent, and make all their errands and then get back on public transit. So we're really excited about the possibilities here, and so we're anxious to be that group who tackles the challenges of a rural area. And just briefly, I'd like to put on a second hat I have as a cyclist. We were a little surprised when the California Bicycle Coalition opposed us because we as cyclists have been working with the NEV advocates in Amador County really very well because it's dangerous. I take my life in my hands when I'm out there on my bicycle, and any possibility that we can utilize an NEV Class 1 or Class 2 route would be wonderful for us. So if the interest in electric cars generates funds for NEVs, the bicycles in our county will benefit greatly. So we're a little different. We don't have bicycle paths, so NEVs are not going to be monopolizing those. So this law or this plan that we're proposing is going to benefit bicycles as well as NEVs.
Well, I'm sure if we have any opposition, we'll get back to this issue. That will be one of the critical issues, I think, for committee members. But let's go on to see, is there anybody else here in support? Is there anybody here to testify in opposition? Please come forward. Introduce yourselves one at a time, your name, the organization that you represent.
Thank you. My name is Jim Brown. I'm with the California Bicycle Coalition. And first off, let me be clear. CBC supports NEVs. We support the environmental benefits they bring and the way that lower speed vehicles can calm traffic in communities and neighborhoods where they're allowed to operate. And we really applaud Amador County's efforts to encourage NEV use. Most of all, we support roads that are designed and operated to safely accommodate all users, and that's the basis of our opposition to this bill. AB 584 allows Amador County to adopt a local NEV plan that could force NEVs and bicycles to share special segregated NEV bike lanes, and of course that's the purpose of this bill, as you've heard. California already provides for segregated Class 2 bike lanes on roads with higher traffic volumes and higher traffic speeds, separating bicycles from motor vehicle traffic, can prevent collisions. It also improves everybody's safety. NEVs are motor vehicles under the existing state law. Legislation that could result in bicyclists being forced to share segregated lanes with NEVs represents a dangerous step backwards. In the community of Lincoln, a variety of NEV facilities have been tested, including shared NEV bike lanes as narrow as 7 feet wide. Most NEVs are 4 to 5 feet wide. My handlebars are about 2 feet wide. That just does not leave enough room for bicyclists and NEVs to safely operate side by side, especially when an NEV is as much as 100 times heavier than I am and going twice as fast as I am. Under those conditions, a collision is likely either within the lane or when either the NEV or the bicycle has to leave the lane in order to avoid one another. Creating the potential for these conditions makes no sense from a standpoint of safety. The fact is NEVs have the characteristics of other motor vehicles that are confined to mixed traffic lanes. Some of the most popular NEV models are larger and heavier than the Mini Cooper and the Smart Car. The curb weight of the Miles XV40 NEV, one of the brands available, is just 360 pounds less than the curb weight of a Toyota RAV4 SUV. And that's the difference between a couple of hefty adult passengers. And NEVs are obviously much heavier and faster than, larger and heavier than motorcycles and motor scooters. All these vehicles are required to operate in the mixed traffic lane, and they cannot operate in bicycle lanes. Existing law already takes care of how to accommodate slower moving vehicles like NEVs, and frankly, we question whether we really need to have segregated lanes for NEVs. Some NEVs operators feel safer in segregated lanes, but those kinds of lanes really limit what bicyclists can do. Under current state law, if there is a Class 2 bike lane on a road where I'm riding, I have to ride in that lane. So the existence of a shared NEV lane forces bicyclists into conditions where there's an increased risk of collisions. And of course, NEVs face the same risk. I'm sure nobody wants to hit me either. Most bike car collisions occur at low speeds, and many And in many cases, a bicyclist suffers severe injuries when the motorist is often completely unharmed. Believe me, if I'm struck by a 2-ton NEV going 20 miles an hour, it doesn't matter to me whether it's an electric vehicle or its top speed is 25 miles an hour. I'm going to the hospital. None of this would really matter quite so much if the roadways in Amador County ended at the county line. But the fact is the county is served by 7 state highways, including State Highway 49, which is one of the state's premier tourist routes. And the fact is what happens in Amador County will affect not only the county's 30,000 residents, but hundreds of thousands of other people every year. We have some suggestions for how NEVs and bicyclists can operate safely in Amador County, and we'd be glad to discuss them with those suggestions with them. In its current form, the bill has the potential to endanger bicyclists and could also be used as a precedent for other communities to adopt local NEV plans that include shared facilities. Unless the committee is willing to amend this bill to prevent the implementation of shared facilities, we urge a no vote.
Other witnesses in opposition? Yes. Wait, let's hear someone.
Go ahead. James Lombardo on behalf of the California Association of Bicycle Organizations, and Mr. Brown summarized our position as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other witnesses in opposition?
Yes.
Introduce yourself, your name.
Thank you. My name is Frank Welty, and I'm the Director of Advocacy and Governmental Affairs for the California Council of the Blind. On behalf of the members of the California Council of the Blind, I am speaking in opposition to AB 584, authored by Assemblymember Huber. This bill would authorize the County of Amador and the cities of Jackson, Sutter Creek, and Amador to establish neighborhood electric vehicle NEV transportation plan. We believe the introduction of neighborhood electric vehicles will endanger the lives of blind and visually impaired pedestrians unless the plan includes specific measures to protect the safety of these pedestrians. As it is currently written, AB 584 fails to address this matter. Blind pedestrians rely on the sounds emitted by motor vehicles, especially engine noise, to detect the presence of these vehicles in order to know when it is safe to cross streets. Electric vehicles are virtually silent, so it is nearly impossible for blind pedestrians to detect their presence. In order to ensure the safety of blind and visually impaired pedestrians, an NEV plan must include the following elements. 1, the plan must separate pedestrian and NEV paths of transportation as much as possible. 2, to the extent that the plan permits shared paths of travel between NEVs and pedestrians, including pedestrians crossings of NEV lanes, there must be a means provided for blind pedestrians to audibly detect the presence of NEVs. AB 584 permits NEVs to share paths of travel with pedestrians. Also, AB 584 has little to say about pedestrian safety, and it is silent with respect to the providing for the needs of blind pedestrians to be warned of the presence of NEVs. We know from long experience that the normal traffic planning process used by local governments will not address the safety concerns of blind pedestrians unless local government officials are provided with explicit instructions on how to do so. The cities of Lincoln, Rockland, and the Ratch Development in Orange County have already received a statutory authority to implement NEV transportation plans. So as far as we can tell, no attempt has been made by officials in any of these cities to address potential safety risks posed by NEVs to blind and visually impaired pedestrians. We believe traffic planners in cities covered by AB 584 will repeat this mistake unless the bill explicitly instructs them to address the needs of blind pedestrians. The Motor Vehicle Safety Act, currently under consideration in Congress, contains language that will lead to federal minimum sound standards for detecting cars. New plans should require these vehicles to comply with new standards and address the needs of blind pedestrians. One moment, please. Again, please oppose AB 584 unless it is amended with language to protect the safety of blind and visually impaired pedestrians. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other witnesses in opposition? Before we come back, I'd like to address, maybe have other members address some of the issues. I, too, carried a bill earlier about electric vehicles and protection of blind persons. The governor vetoed, very similar to what was asked. The governor vetoed that bill because he's in a veto message. It said that there is now an undergoing by NHTSA at the national level regulations that will be coming out that will cover this, and that we should wait. And so I would like to remind people what we're doing today is just authorizing and setting parameters for the local plan to be developed in Amador and by both the county and the city with input from the county, from the Regional Transportation Authority. It will include, or ultimately when NHTSA comes out, if that or this legislation will deal with this issue, because I would like to state for the record that the issue that was raised regarding is a national issue, and it's a very important issue. We will not resolve that here, but I'm glad that it was brought up, and that will be resolved by the new regulations. Hopefully that will be coming out this year regarding all electric vehicles and how to protect the blind persons, pedestrians, and others. And so I look forward to those. And so I don't think we can really focus on that. Let's leave that aside unless someone else until we hear from that NHTSA report. Senator Huff.
Maybe it'd be appropriate just to, in the process of coming up with a local plan, to include some enunciation for blind folks, because maybe the federal government gets it in place by the end of the year, maybe they don't, but if not, then at least when they implement this, they should have something in place. The federal government, I mean, they're not always as timely as we would like them to be. If they lag, as opposed to us, yeah. But it seems like what you're saying, it would take care of itself in a timely manner. If not, then before they implement this, I think they should take care of that issue.
I think that I would like that to be part, that you would address this issue, that you anticipate that the federal, in the plan that the federal government will be issuing regulations, but if not, you encourage, the local to deal with this issue, even though we're not going to set those parameters here. But we're going to request that this issue has arisen. There needs to be some dealing with it. Our feeling is, let's see if we can do this through NHTSA at first and follow those guidelines. But as Senator Huff has pointed out, the federal government, may take a long time, just as we infrequently do take a long time to resolve issues. Let's get back to the other issue, and the other issue, and maybe other members, is the sharing of dedicated lanes by both neighborhood electric vehicles and bicycles. Again, that local plan will have to deal with that. As we know, my understanding is for streets that are included in the plan that have speed limits of 35 miles per hour or less, there does not need to be a dedicated electric vehicle lane. We're talking about now streets and roads or highways that have above speed limits of above 35, in which there needs to be a dedicated lane, because by state law, those vehicles that can travel only between 20 and 25 miles an hour are not allowed in the thoroughfare on those streets that are above 30. So you need a dedicated lane to take them out. The question is, and I'd like how do you have any suggestions after listening to how we're going to deal with this issue of sharing? We're not going to require, we'll be honest, we raised the issue as one of the amendments, but my thought was not to ask you to prescribe how to deal with that, but to say that that's a legitimate issue, and we'd like to hear any thoughts that you have.
Well, part of this is, remember that this is a pilot program for a rural county. We currently have pilot programs in Lincoln and Rockland.
Right, and we did not require them to have
Right,
this.
and we did not. And so this is really to kind of complement the information we expect to get back from those two pilot programs with the rural county perspective of being able to travel between different rural communities within a rural county. And that there is a sunset date on this program, and we do expect to get a report back to the legislature by 2015 if this bill were to pass. The local transportation commission, which has been very supportive of the grassroots efforts to get this kinds of approval, are looking at all of these issues, and I expect them to address these concerns as they develop the plan, because remember, the bill won't actually make the plan happen. The plan will still have to go through the local process and still have the CHP and others chime in on whether or not the plan will actually work. So my preference is to allow that local control and allow them to work through these issues on the local level, and then have the report come back to the legislature, be able to compare kind of the inter-traffic and intra-traffic on these different models between Lincoln, Rockland, and Amador County in order for us as a legislature to take a more informed perspective and address these issues down the road, but allow the local process for now.
Other members? Senator Pavley.
Yes, just in general, I'm very supportive of neighborhood electric vehicles, but so many of these counties are far different than down where we live, and different kinds of sensitivities and combination of different vehicles at different miles per hour, and they just don't have the issues or problems. And I think NEVs are going to be incredibly more popular as time goes on. Growing, population growing older and ability to get from point A to point B. Plus, they're darn fun to ride. So this is just a permit, as I understand, to allow the county to consider this. And they will bring in the local law enforcement who have a better understanding of the issue and the problems, and the highway patrol, and gauge tourists' kinds of problems with people who aren't aware of the local roads. I assume they're not on Highway 49, but I don't know that. But can you put a list of issues that requires them to review and consider some of these issues that are being raised, which are legitimate, but I don't know, because I don't live up there, how relevant they are to those particular areas. But overall, statewide, they are important issues, but maybe
we have already identified, I think, in the analysis, 3 critical issues that we would like, although we're not requiring an amendment, that we would certainly like to be addressed in the plan. One of them is, as was noted, the conflict with bicycles. 2, we've already dealt with the issue in terms of the difficulty with the ability of people who are blind or visually impaired, and how to deal with that issue. There's appropriate and universal signage is another issue that needs to be dealt with. And the other issue that we would certainly like them to deal with is the issue of, as we pointed out, when you have a dedicated lane, because you've taken cars out of neighborhood electric vehicles out of the main thoroughfare that's off, let's say, on the right, which is where they typically are, how difficult it is for that neighborhood electric vehicle to make a left turn. They have to now come across the traffic. That issue, too, needs to be dealt with in the local plan. So those are some critical issues that any local plan, especially if they're going to be reporting back to the legislature, needs to address. I'm sure there are other issues, but
like
those
if you don't have a sidewalk or cleared pathway for pedestrians, and they use the street as their way of traveling, then you have conflict that you wouldn't normally have.
That's right. So that too. These are issues that the legislature, because as was pointed out, we've now done Rockland, Lincoln, now Amador, and we have another bill today that will come up to deal with the same issue in Fresno. So we're beginning to see this move statewide, and and I'm sure the legislature would like not to micromanage. This is up to the local regional transportation authority, the local community, but we would like to make sure that we ensure that overall state interests are at least dealt with in these plans. And I would also like to say to Senator Pavley, since when is Long Beach not a rural area? And
About 1905.
thank you, Senator Pavley. Other members? Anybody else have a question? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move it.
Bill's been moved by Senator Huff. Would you like to close?
Just want to give you our commitment that we will be looking at those issues as the Amador County Transportation Commission takes up the plan and looks to put something in place that addresses all of the committee's concerns, and we will definitely be passing that information on to the commission and urge your aye vote.
And I will tell you that this committee, or I'm sure the committee also that in the Assembly will also be following this very closely, because we see these as critical plans that will help us as we see, as this begins to move to statewide and other counties, that we will develop potentially some kind of model ordinance which will come out of these ordinances. So thank you very much. Secretary, please call the roll.
Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Huff?
Aye.
Huff, aye. Ashburn? Ashburn, aye. DeSaulnier?
Aye.
DeSaulnier, aye. Harmon? Kehoe? Oropeza? Pavley?
Aye.
Pavley, aye. Semidion? 5-0.
You have 5 votes. That's sufficient for passage, but we're going to hold the roll open for the absent members.
She has another bill.
You have another bill?
Hopefully this one won't take quite as much time.
We have so many.
Number 10.
Number 10?
Yes.
Eldorado, all right. AB 1204.
Hopefully we won't have quite the same opposition and issues for this bill.
Well, I thought that was very interesting. Those were important issues that were raised, and you are beginning to trail, to blaze literally a new trail, and to figure out how wide that trail is and who's going to drive on it. And these are legitimate concerns.
So AB 1204 is another district bill that applies only to a section of code that calls out the El Dorado County Transportation Commission and the makeup on that commission. Since it was originally enacted, the county has changed quite a bit, and after an extensive and deliberative process throughout the entire county, we believe a compromise has been reached on what the commission should look like for a growing and changing county. The commission created a 14-member Citizens Advisory Committee that held 6 public meetings throughout the county to discuss the issue. And what you see before you is the bipartisan compromise that was reached. Assemblymember Ted Gaines is a joint author of this bill, and I have with me the executive director of the El Dorado County Transportation Commission, Catherine Matthews, who headed up all of that extensive outreach throughout the county and can testify as to the unanimous support of the El Dorado County Transportation Commission. We also have support from the Four Seasons Civic League and numerous other constituent groups throughout the county, and urge your aye vote in adopting this new model for the Transportation Commission in El Dorado County.
Witnesses in support.
Thank you. I'm Catherine Matthews, Executive Director of the El Dorado County Transportation Commission, and I would simply like to add to Assemblymember Huber's comments that the language that is included currently in AB 1204 was actually formulated by my Transportation Commission as a result of the process of citizen input, and then forwarded to Assemblymember Gaines and Huber for their consideration and incorporation into AB 1204. So the El Dorado County Transportation Commission unanimously supports AB 1204.
I want to thank you for sharing with us this very inclusive process for looking at the membership and how in coming up with the assembly member coming up with the legislation, it was really based upon a great deal of community input and public process. Are there other witnesses in support?
Paul Ray
Graveling from El Dorado Hills. I participated in the 2-year process leading to this bill, and as president of the El Dorado Hills Citizens Alliance. Also, there are 3 gentlemen from the Four Seasons Civic League who are here today but could not stay due to the postponement, and they asked me to convey also that they, as well as the rest of us, are in full support of this measure. The bottom line is that El Dorado Hills is has been a rapidly growing community. Transportation and traffic issues and road system issues have been our #1 concerns, and all of us believe it's very important for El Dorado Hills to participate fully and fairly in the public processes that address these issues.
So the question I have for you, are you going to become incorporated?
We certainly hope so. I was also active in the earlier incorporation committee, and we're I think there's some current fresh interest, but we haven't discovered anyone actually forming a new committee, but it wouldn't surprise me if something happens. I can't say when, but soonish.
Soonish.
Yes.
Are there other witnesses in support? Are there any witnesses in opposition? Are there... The bill's been moved. Senator Ashburn.
Assemblymember Huber, Senator Cox has raised concerns for some period of time about what I would call the second provision of the bill, which is that, so the first provision being that an additional member of the Board of Supervisors would serve on the Transportation Commission. The second part of the bill is sort of speculative and about incorporations, and that if they incur, 2 members from that new jurisdiction then would then serve on this. And I know he's expressed concern about, how many incorporations could occur, the membership increasing, 2 at a time as those occur, and whether it might not be a wiser course to deal with the first part of the bill first and then deal with the second part later in the event that incorporations actually take place. So let me put that in the form of a question. How would you feel about dividing that out of the bill and addressing the question of what happens if and when, which is the chair's question, if and when an incorporation actually occurs?
Sure. Let me address that a couple of ways. First, the language that is currently in the bill, the compromise that was reached, mirrors what many other counties already use as the statutory language. I have before me the Placer County Transportation Commission in the Government Code that has the same exact clause of allowing members from each incorporated city in the county to serve on the Transportation Commission. The Nevada County Government Code section, which does the same exact language of allowing of each incorporated city in the county. The Monterey County Transportation Commission Government Code section that uses the identical words that are also in the bill about each incorporated city. The Santa Cruz County Transportation Commission, also codified in our Government Code, which also uses the same exact language. If the argument that Senator Cox is asserting that to have language about having representatives from each incorporated city in the county were true, we would see an explosion of incorporations happening in all of these counties that currently have the Government Code section drafted as it would be drafted in this bill. I really question whether or not any community would incorporate merely because the Government Code section is consistent in El Dorado County as it is with all these other counties throughout the state. Remember that this has been a long process, and what was looked at is El Dorado County's Transportation Commission Code now is unique in that it calls out the identity of a specific city, and it is not neutral to the cities in the county, as are all of the other county codes that have been codified in our Government Code. So this bill rectifies that problem, makes El Dorado County consistent with what has been the state policy throughout all of our counties, and I think the argument on incorporation may be a bit of an interpretation, but At the end of the day, I look at the compromise that was reached, and if I try to amend the bill to address Senator Cox's concern, which I don't put much credence in that it'll spur incorporations because the evidence is to the contrary throughout the state. But if I change that, the entire compromise falls apart. And right now, you have unanimous support from those in the county. The only person raising a concern is Senator Cox. But if we amend the bill, it all falls apart, and there's just been hundreds and hundreds of hours that the community has poured into this compromise, and I am not willing to take the amendment that Senator Cox is offering at this time.
Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the explanation. My understanding is that the recommendation is to do pass, and that, but do pass to rules, so that the bill could go to Rules Committee for referral to the Local Government Committee. Because the issue that is directly before us is a local government committee matter. Our interest, of course, is in the Transportation Authority, and the more specific questions that Senator Cox has raised and Assemblymember Huber is responding to, I think more appropriately are addressed in local government. So what I would ask of you, Mr. Chair, is a request that if we move this bill today, that we send it to Rules and have, with a recommendation that Rules make the referral to local government so that can be looked at.
Well, the request will be to refer the bill to Rules Committee.
Thank you.
And so that will be the motion to refer the bills to Rules.
Can I? Senator, you'll get your chance, Senator Harman.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the author, I apologize getting in here late, I just came from Judiciary, but you said the agreement would all fall apart, I thought I heard you say, this kind of settlement. Why? Why does it all fall apart? What are the details that cause this traumatic failure of this by making this simple amendment that Senator Cox wants? What's the problem?
Do you want me to answer?
Yes, please.
Catherine Matthews from the El Dorado County Transportation Commission.
Thank you.
As I indicated earlier, the language that is before you was actually formulated by my commission after considerable public outreach. And my commission hasn't entertained or been communicated with about an amendment. So I can't answer on behalf of my commission whether they think it would all fall apart or not. But I do believe it is a tenuous compromise and one that does reflect the input that we received throughout the community.
Well, I'm not sure that answered the question, but I guess that's the answer I'm going to get.
Let's see if I might answer. Part of my opening remarks was to talk about the 6 public hearings that we had that were very well attended. At one of those hearings, there was over 150 local constituents in attendance just on the drafting of languages, of how you would draft the language to address people's concern. And I'll tell you, not everybody was happy. I think, as with any good compromise, the folks in El Dorado Hills weren't happy, the folks in Placerville weren't happy, but it was a compromise, and it was one that was reached with painstaking effort on the part of all parties involved. It was an intense and highly involved process at the commission when the recommendation was made on this specific language. The first motion to do it a little differently failed. And this motion to bring it up with this language is the one that passed unanimously. And I think it is my personal opinion that it is a tenuous compromise. And if you take one piece of it out, the people who are supporting the bill now will not support the bill, and it will, in my words, fall apart.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other members?
Has there been a motion on the bill? The bill's been moved by Senator Pavley. Would you like to close?
I just wanted to ask a clarification first, if I could, because I understood Senator Ashburn's motion to be a recommendation to do pass 2 rules with an additional recommendation that it referred to local
as
government.
I mentioned, it will be due pass 2 rules. Rules will deal with that issue, but we're not going to state what that is. but that will be dealt with at the Rules Committee. But our recommendation is just do pass 2 rules.
Then I would just ask for you to support the local process and the hundreds of hours that were put into reaching this compromise and the bipartisan nature of Assemblymember Gaines and myself as joint authors on the bill, and ask for your support. Thank you.
Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, I. Huff.
Aye.
Huff, I. Ashburn. DeSaulnier.
Aye.
DeSaulnier, I. Harmon.
No.
Harmon, no. Kehoe. Oropeza. Pavley.
Aye.
Pavley, I. Semidian. Semidian, I. 5-1.
The bill has 5 votes sufficient for passage, but we'll hold the roll open for the absent members.
Number 9.
Next, Assemblymember Cook, AB 589. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We're good.
Okay. AB 589 requires the Department of Motor Vehicles to issue distinctive driver licenses or state identification cards specifically for registered sex offenders. It will also require these sex offenders to have this identification on them at all times. Finally, it requires a current photograph and address verification for the original license, the original identification card, and for each renewal. Each year, an estimated 800,000 children are reported missing, more than 105,000 in California alone. This equates to more than 2,000 children each day. A number of high-profile missing children cases within the last decade have brought to light the need to bring California's laws and processes for missing person response and recovery in the 21st century up to date. In perhaps the worst cases, those involving child abduction by sex offenders, the outcome is often tragic. This is a clear indication that we need better tools to help law enforcement and others in dealing with this problem. AB 589 will aid in the identification of sex offenders, which will assist law enforcement and others in keeping children safe. Although information on sex offenders is available through the Megan's Law database, it is often of little use in real-world situations. It requires access to the internet and time to locate a specific individual on the database. In certain situations, it is necessary to have immediate access to information that indicates whether somebody is a sex offender. For instance, if a campus security official at a local high school accosts an adult on campus and asks to see the person's identification, a state's driver's license or state identification under AB 589, it would indicate right away that that person is a sex offender. This would facilitate appropriate action on the part of security. Without this bill, the person might not have any identification, and the security official would have no indication that a potentially dangerous person is on campus. Similarly, in searching for a suspect in a missing child case, law enforcement can look to the special driver's license or identification in order to alert them instantly to the presence of a sex offender, which may be of particular interest in certain cases. A distinctive state driver's license or identification card would provide a quick method in which to alert people to the presence of such an individual. 43% of sex offenders were rearrested for various offenders. We must take the necessary action to protect the public, children specifically, from these criminals. I have with me as my witnesses Mo Dubois, and Rebecca Smith with the More Kids organization, formed after the tragic murder of Amber Dubois. So if I could have my witnesses right now.
Thank you, Assemblymember Cook. Assemblymember Nava, do you wish to state an opening statement also? And we will grant you that extra time.
Well, thank you. All I wanted to do is I'm a joint author on
Yes.
this bill, and should there be some questions that the committee may have, I hope that I can be of some assistance.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you, Committee Chair and Committee, for having us here today and listening to our statements. And thank you, officers of Nava and Cook, for assisting us with this. I am Mo Dubois. I am here in representing More Kids as sponsors of this bill, but more importantly, I'm here representing the legacy of my daughter Amber. My daughter Amber, some of you may have known, was murdered, abducted, raped, beaten by a sexual predator. She was abducted from directly down the street from her school, less than a quarter of a mile from her school. She was abducted on her way to school in an area which is supposed to be safe and an area which is supposed to be protected for children to be safe. These predators, no matter how much we want to keep them in jail and keep them caged up, they are being released on a daily basis. And with today's overcrowding in our jails, they are being released at an alarming rate. If an officer pulls over a vehicle for having a broken taillight, and he instantaneously recognizes this person as a sexual offender and realizes that the 14-year-old child next to this person is your daughter, he is then faced with a scenario of what to do, and immediately knowing that your daughter is in the presence of a child sexual predator who will more than likely endanger, hurt, and possibly even kill this child, is more than a justified enough reason for these predators, who have proven themselves to be monsters, proven themselves over and over again through studies that we've noticed in the past, that they will commit crimes over and over again. These are predators and monsters with a mental disease. This isn't a physical addiction to a chemical or a drug. These people have mental disorders which causes them to continuously prey on our children. The fact that they can carry an identification card, that law enforcement can immediately recognize who they are when they're pulled over at a random checkpoint, be it for a sobriety checkpoint, registration checkpoint, or a random checkpoint put up by law enforcement in an immediate area that a child has gone missing. This provides an immediate tool to law enforcement, which is invaluable to them. The fact that they don't have to do a background check, they don't have to do a call in to the station to have an investigation done on this person. They know immediately who this person is that they're dealing with. Just at the moment they're handed this ID is, to me, is an invaluable tool. And what we are proposing with our legislation is to provide law enforcement and these agencies, which are out there designed to protect our children, with as many tools as they possibly can to ensure that our children are safe and to ensure that your children, as well as everyone's children in our state, will come home. My only child was murdered by a sexual offender. I have nothing I can protect except for the children here that are left in this state, and I will do everything I can to do that. And I hope that you recognize the importance of this and pass this on to the next committee so the Safety Committee can take a good look at this and realize the importance of it. Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate your courage in coming before us and sharing this loss and your attempt to really correct what you see as a failing in the state's legislature. Other witnesses in support? Are there witnesses in opposition? You can, why don't you just leave, and then you can come back right after they speak.
Mr. Chairman and members, Francisco Labaco, on behalf of the American Civil Liberties Union, we are in opposition to the legislation. With all due respect to the good authors, in our view, this bill stigmatizes a class of ex-offenders while serving little useful purpose or improving public safety. Branding these documents results in disclosure of an ex-offender's status every time ID is required to be shown. Certainly, this make it more difficult for these folks to create productive, law-abiding lives for themselves. Point out that the legislation applies to every single person subject to registration on 290, not just to SVPs, as was referred to in the testimony. I also point out to the committee that not more than 90%, up to 90, if not more than 90% of sexual crimes are committed by family members or someone the victim knows. Creating these distinctive driver's license, in our view, doesn't do anything to minimize that victimization. We joined the San Diego Union Tribune in opposing the bill. Thank you.
Other witnesses in opposition?
Philip Ung on behalf of the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault. We are actually neutral on this bill. So just to clarify, we are neutral. And as members of the California Sex Offender Management Board, which was created by the legislature to make evidence-based recommendations in regards to managing this incredibly complex population. Over the past 3 years, the Sex Offender Management Board has released dozens of evidence-based recommendations in regards to this population. The Sex Offender Management Board and the Inspector General also released specific recommendations in regards to Mr. Gardner's case related to Amber and Chelsea. Of all of those recommendations, none of them were related to sex offender-specific identification. I suspect, or we suspect, that the reason that is because we've yet to see evidence that sex offender-specific identification will, one, reduce recidivism or deter crime, two, help law enforcement during an investigation. So until we see that evidence or something other than hypothetical scenarios, we remain neutral on this bill. We'd also like to say, as a victim organization, we greatly appreciate and admire the strength that the Dubras have shown in the aftermath of their daughter's death. Thank you.
Other witnesses in opposition?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ignacio Hernandez on behalf of the California Attorneys for Criminal Justice, Statewide Association of Criminal Defense Attorneys. We are opposed to the legislation really on two grounds. We think the bill is overly broad, number one, and two, could have the negative impact where the worst of the worst offenders will simply choose not to obtain a driver's license. And the reason why we believe it's overly broad, for the types of individuals that have been mentioned, the sexual predators, those that are repeat offenders, SVPs, they're going to be locked up for a long, long period of time. So in practical terms, that's not who's going to be affected by this bill. Okay? They're going to be locked up either civilly or they're going to be locked up in prison for most of their lives, or they're going to be on active parole when they come out. And in that situation, when you're pulled over and you're on active parole, law enforcement knows right away. So given the tool, it's not an additional tool to law enforcement. The practical effect is every time you pull out your driver's license, somebody's going to see it. But for that population, it really won't have any effect. Who it will affect, because it's all 290 registrants, will be those individuals who, say, had an offense. This is a real case where they were drinking too much and walking down the street, and they pull down their pants. And they get convicted, and they're sexual offenders, and they have to register, and they're 290 registrants, and for the rest of their lives, they would be subject to this bill. Now, the positive public safety or transportation impact for having some mark on their driver's license so when they get pulled over is minimal. But what it will do is every time they pull it out at a store or somewhere else, someone's going to look at it and think, this must be a sexual predator. This must be someone who's raped children and committed the horrible crimes that you heard about today. And that's where we have real problems, because that's not the population that we're targeting. I mean, the individuals that will really be affected by this aren't the population that we're really targeting. So it makes us feel better. We think it helps law enforcement. But law enforcement already has the tools to check someone's record, to know if they're on probation or parole immediately. So this adds nothing other than just showing it around to folks and giving the public the wrong impression. So for those reasons, we're opposed. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Other witnesses in opposition? Bring it back. Members of the committee? Senator Harman.
The bill states at page 3, line 4, you don't read it, but it says shall carry his or her driver's license. What if they don't carry it? Is there some kind of enforcement provision somewhere? I don't see it in the bill.
No, the point, I'm sorry, I just came back up to address one issue that was brought up by the last gentleman up here.
We'll get
Turn
we'll
your
get to
microphone
that,
on.
But let's,
I'm sorry.
Let's first address, and Mr. Dubois, you don't have to answer this. Senator Harmon is
Either
asked
one
the
of the
author.
co-authors, I'd
author.
like to know if there's some enforcement provision,
How do you
because the
enforce-
bill is mandatory, says you shall carry.
And I would like to state, to follow up on that, as that question is, no one else is required to carry their driver's license. So normally, if you're walking down the street, you do not have to. But this bill says that they shall carry it. So the question is, how do you enforce that?
To try and address the question, first of all, one of the things that we're going to attempt to do in this is the bill is very, very flexible, and we are looking, quite frankly, for suggestions on this. The problem that the gentleman here has brought to us when we discuss this is the issue of time. And the fact, and we're not talking about somebody that has something on their record for urinating on a tree or something like that. We're talking about somebody with a history, a particular code that would be on the license or an identification. And right now, you're absolutely right. It is a requirement in there. Now, the origin of this is that, if I understood it correctly, that it kind of bubbled up from the different police agencies about the issue of time and the fact that there might be certain indicators in the car of the person, the way they're acting. And of course, you're right, this would be a red flag if there was a code on the driver's license or identification card, which this individual, based upon past history and conviction, was required to carry, which would prompt an all-out investigation. Unfortunately, in many of these cases, the clock is ticking, and far too often, by the time the proper response, and there's other bills that we are carrying that are also addressing communication and agency response and some of the other things, which I'm not going to go into right now. So that's part of the reason that we did want to address that right away, that the police could use all their agencies, all their communication, particularly highlighted by the fact that somebody was missing, that there was a high probability that somebody was in danger of not only sexual abuse, but perhaps something far worse, as in the case of this gentleman to the left of me.
For Senator Harmon, the intent of the bill is not to incorporate those individuals, everyone who's under Section 290. We have to be more discriminating in who it is that we identify that is likely to pose a risk to a child when they've been abducted. I don't think that a 22-year-old college student who was inebriated and urinated on the sidewalk falls into that category. But it is uncontroverted that for certain kinds of sexual offenses, that individuals are repeat offenders. And for those who have been convicted, it is not an unreasonable requirement that someone who has demonstrated that they have that particular proclivity carry with them a form of identification, be it a driver's license or an ID issued by DMV, that so identifies them. Now, the bill is clearly a work in progress. Let me give you an example. The concerns about, and let's just acknowledge it, the scarlet letter, a mark that is apparent and obvious on the driver's license. Arizona, and I don't like to talk about Arizona, but in Arizona, the way that they address this issue, it's on the mag strip. So that when the officer swipes the driver's license in the vehicle, it comes back up with the information that this person has been convicted of a particular offense of which there is some concern. And I would suggest that in the other states like Delaware, Florida, Louisiana, and Oklahoma, where there is an identifying mark on the driver's license, we haven't heard, and there's been no evidence presented to this committee, that the parade of horribles that have been suggested by the opposition in fact occurs. And so I'm not convinced that people who have such a mark on their driver's license are immediately rendered pariahs in the community. Now, Mr. Dubois has spent about a year and a half surveying law enforcement agencies all up and down the state of California, compiled their protocol binders, and spoken with them about what it is they'd like to have and what they believe to be an effective, efficient tool in the course of their investigation, in the early part of their investigation. Statistically, there is evidence that supports the idea that if a child has been abducted by someone who is likely to cause them harm, if you can get to that kid within the first 3 hours, the likelihood of saving their lives is enhanced dramatically. The longer it takes, the better the chances are of locating that person. And so from a practical law enforcement perspective, what the officers have told Mr. Dubois is, when he made reference to the traffic stops, when he made reference to canvassing a neighborhood, if you identify someone in a neighborhood who has a driver's license that has a mark on it, or that can be determined that this person has that history and background, you then don't have to interview 100 people. You can then focus your resources on the person who's more likely to have committed, well, one we know has committed a crime similar to that in the past, and is likely to have committed that again in the future. Now, is it an unreasonable requirement that we're going to burden a convicted felon of certain sexual offenses with having to carry either a driver's license or an ID? What is the significance of that particular burden for that individual who poses an ongoing threat to young people, to children in our communities? That's not an unreasonable requirement of someone, if in fact we believe it contributes to enhancing public safety.
Assembly member and also Assembly, I think the question had to do with the enforcement issue.
Did, and I have two additional follow-up questions.
This is a bill that can be
What
amended.
about, okay, so it needs, you need to put
That's
some
the
kind of
answer.
an
That's the
amendment.
answer. Thank you.
We can fix that.
We need to put an enforcement clause in there.
Okay.
Now let me direct your attention to page 3, line 6. It says they have to carry the ID card when they're outside. Excuse me, outside his or her place of residence. What about homeless people? Do they have a residence? Or are there people that don't have a residence that could be a sexual offender? Take a look at that and see if we need to clean that up, if you would be my suggestion.
And that's the same second. You don't have to carry one. So if an officer stopped you and asked you for one, you could say, I don't have to carry it. With this, why wouldn't this person say the same thing?
Well, because we're going to amend the bill to include that they have to.
Violation of parole.
And we'll make it a violation.
A driver's license?
Or an ID, or an identification, or an ID.
And then my third suggestion would be, starting with the very first sentence of the bill, the department shall not issue a license to a person that has this 290 requirement. How does the department know that? How's the department? There's going to have to be some language in there saying that the criminal authorities are going to have to notify DMV. This person's required to register, and then they're going to have to flag that to say, okay, when that person comes in for a license. And it's my understanding when felons are released from prison, they don't have a driver's license. I think they have to surrender it when they're sentenced. Check
They do
that
have an
out.
identification card.
Pardon me?
They have to have an identification card to be able to cash checks or be able to go through life. So basically, they have a form of identification. Whether they have to give up a driver's license or not, they still carry some form of identification.
Might want to look at that.
Yeah, and I don't think it's unreasonable to ask someone who's been convicted of a sexual
I
violent
agree.
offense to have the obligation to report to DMV for the ID.
And as long as I have the mic and just kind of talking about things that how to do it. You mentioned one state did it with the magnetic strip.
Yes.
I'm a little skeptical of the magnetic strip. It's not clear. I don't want the scarlet letter, but I don't want the magnetic strip. It's got to be something some street cop can look at in 2 seconds and say, uh-oh, before he has a chance to go and run it through, swipe it through the computer on his onboard computer in his police car. So those are just some thoughts.
So
and comments.
another example where California doesn't want to follow Arizona.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Senator DeSania.
I and Mr. Dubois and the authors, I want you to take these questions in the sense that I have great respect for what you're attempting to do. These are awful crimes. What you went through, I can't imagine as a parent having to go through. But these may be some questions you get if you get out of this committee and get to Senator Leno's committee. Senator Leno and I have had joint meetings of the Policy Committee and the Fiscal Committee in this House with the Management Board and trying to really focus on evidence-based. So given that these are very emotional issues, sometimes we in the legislature and other legislatures have passed things that seemed good but actually didn't result in greater safety, and in some cases some of the experts would argue actually increase the vulnerability of the population. So I guess I'm just a big believer if we're ever going to really start to get at having a higher level of protection and not having, unfortunately, these incidents continue to happen, at least seemingly, like no matter what we do, it doesn't seem like it makes a difference. So in that sort of spirit, I guess I'd ask the question of the authors. We don't have law enforcement, at least on the bill. You've had conversations with them. Do you have support from law enforcement? And then secondarily, Mr. Navi, you mentioned some states. We don't have that in our analysis. Staff tells me that they believe that Florida does the same thing. Do we have any kind of empirical, any real evidence that these kind of things actually are helping, either from law enforcement or from studies from other states?
Mr. Dubois has had conversations with law enforcement, so he's in a better position to talk about that.
As far as law enforcement, I have spoken with them. They're reviewing the current revised verbiage since there has been some revisions, and they are submitting their letters of support to us at this moment. They're currently writing them up. Their legislative representatives for the sheriff's departments, for the agencies I've spoken with, are all bringing this up to their superiors, and everyone I've spoken with is in full support of it. Whether we have those letters now or by next week when we go to the next committee, we do have letters of support, and they are coming forth with.
Have you had any kind of communication with we had somebody get up and representing the Sexual Management Board. Have you had any discussions with them? We have national experts on that board. They're presenting at least, and again, I'm sure Chairman Leno would bring this up if it gets out of this committee, that's why they're there, is to give us that kind of information so we don't make mistakes.
Okay. We'll look for that.
Right.
Now, and to answer your question with respect to the other states, Delaware, anyone convicted of a sex offense, particular sex offense, has the letter Y on their license. An explanation of the code is contained on the back of the license. Florida, sexual predators and sex offenders have driver's licenses with the applicable code section of the offense denoted in the right-hand corner of the license. And this applies in Florida to 43,000 offenders and predators. Louisiana has the word sex offender printed on the driver's license. So I would suppose that we'd have a compromise bill here that doesn't have the word sex offender printed across the face of it. Oklahoma, those that are listed in the Department of Corrections sex offenders registry as aggravated or habitual offenders have driver's license with sex offender in red in 3 different locations on their driver's license or their ID. Tennessee has a law on the books, and Maryland is currently considering legislation.
In looking at those or having communication with those states, do we get any kind of information that they've had some kind of review in terms of the effectiveness of these particular laws in those states, and how long have they been in the books?
I have not had contact with states outside of California. All of my focus has been on the California, since that's where we're trying to improve our safety, is here in California. I've had communications with other agencies across the states, but that was more on other bills, not regarding the driver's license bill.
Well, I appreciate all the comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure how I'm going to vote on this. If I did vote for it, I just want to let you know these kind of concerns will continue to come up to me before it goes to the floor, if that's where it ends up.
Are there any other members that wish to address? I'd like to say that John Albert Gardner's horrible, horrible crimes illustrated, I believe, the failing of our state's criminal justice system. And these are failings that we must address. And I believe that the package of bills that you have brought forward and Chelsea King's family have brought forward address these failings. So, for example, the other bills, 1, mandate sentences for sex offenders. 2, prescribe peace officer training for missing child cases. Third one establishes Department of Justice protocols to aid rapid responses in missing child cases. And the fourth one provides notification systems for missing children. I believe, though, that this bill does not relate to addressing the failings of our criminal justice system in responding to or preventing these terrible crimes. It seems to me that putting a mark on someone's driver's license would be more useful for a crime that involves the driver's license, check kiting, supplying liquor to underage folks. I do not see the relationship between a person's California driver's license and their status as a convicted sex offender. So, therefore, I will not be supporting this bill today. Is there a motion on the bill? And would you like to close, and then we will need a motion on the bill? Bill's been moved by Senator Harmon with a second referral to public safety. Yes.
Chairman, I think brings up perhaps a good point. I'm supportive of sex offenders being required to carry some kind of identification with them at all times. But I just, as you brought this up, Mr. Chairman, I'm thinking, is it the right way to tie it to the driver's license? Maybe not. What happens when, well, you know, just as a condition of being convicted of one of these offenses that requires the Section 290 registration, that immediately that person is required to have some kind of identification card that must carry, and they must carry it with them at all times, and must, on request of a police officer, produce it. So if there's been one of these crimes and we're in that magic 3-hour window, and they come across somebody that, well, anybody, say, do you have one of these cards? And they have to produce it. And if they don't, they make that a penal code violation. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. I support the intent. I'm just not sure whether we've got the right vehicle. And if we do, how are we going to mechanically, procedurally do it? How is DMV going to get notice of who's on the list, who isn't on the list, who's then you get taken off the list? Just some thoughts.
If I could just briefly respond. Senator, I hear what you're saying, and Mr. Chair, I understand that. Yeah, there's obviously we're not there yet. Maybe the mechanics, the process, everything like that. And the issue right now is whether this bill is going to go forward, about whether there's enough merit in this, whether the problem that we talked about is that serious, whether it should be stopped right now or go forward where there is a possibility of salvation, because at least in my mind, and I think everyone on this side, and I think everyone collectively, the stakes are pretty high. Working on this bill, it's amazing what you learn, and we've talked to a lot of different police agencies. Even though legislation is still in the embryonic stage, I think a lot of the things in terms of protocols and everything else are coming to light, which just by itself, I'm reviewing that, there are mechanisms to go forward so that we can communicate, that we can get the word out, because as I said, time is critical. You know, obviously the co-authors are very sympathetic to this gentleman here because of his tragedy. And I hear the concerns of people. I think there are mechanisms, there are smarter minds than mine that perhaps can come up with solutions that hopefully we can move this along, because as I said earlier, the stakes, it's going to happen again. And if we can find a mechanism, if we can find language collectively where we can keep going forward to give this gentleman and others that are in this some hope for closure and making it better in the future, then I and collectively we ask for your support to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I will take that as your closing. Yes. Thank you, Assembly Member. This bill has a second referral to the Public Safety Committee, so the motion will be to refer it to Public Safety. With that, will the Secretary please call the roll?
Lowenthal.
No.
Lowenthal, no. Huff. Ashburn. DeSaulnier. Harmon.
Aye.
Harmon, aye. Kehoe. Oropeza. Pavley. Semidion. Semidion, no. 1-2.
That bill has one vote. We'll place that on call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is here.
Thank you.
Item number 11.
Item take a deep breath. You know, sometimes you pass legislation and you don't, but heartfelt, that was a horrible tragedy. And I'm glad that there is a group of bills that we're working on, and there may be a way to move this, but no, it was very difficult. Mr. Eng, Assembly Member Eng, it's a pleasure to see you.
Thank you.
High occupancy toll rates.
Yes, again,
AB 1224.
pleasure to see you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. I appreciate the deliberation that this esteemed body has had to go through over a number of bills. This bill, we're taking up AB 1224. As you know, in 2008, SB 1422, I believe, passed out of this committee and went to our side and was voted on and passed. This bill was able to take advantage of $210 in a federal allocation for $210 million. I'm sorry, what did I say?
The $210 million we swept up into our budget. It's the rest of the money. It's still down there.
$210 million. I made that mistake to emphasize.
You can tell we need a little break up here.
I think I intentionally misspoke to emphasize that it was $210 million that we wouldn't ordinarily have had from the federal government to do a very, very important landmark congestion pricing study. And this allowed the LA Metropolitan Transportation Authority, Metro, fondly called Metro, to develop an express lanes project. And with a report back to the legislature on the performance of the program. Prior to starting the project, through its public outreach program and through a due diligence process, LA Metro decided to perform a full environmental impact report, decided to add transparency in terms of a number of public hearings that exceeded the minimum requirement, and had hundreds of meetings. As a result of that, the information that was gleaned from this due diligence that I think was absolutely necessary and absolutely appropriate, this bill will ask that the sunset date on the congestion pricing study and report be moved back for 2 years. This will give LA Metro, the sponsor of the bill, the appropriate time to develop the critical roadway improvements, to operate the express lanes, collect the important data that I think will be important not just to the region and not just to the state but to the entire nation, but to ensure that we keep $210 million in federal funds, creating 2,400 new jobs in the process. The bill has had bipartisan support in the other house. There's no opposition to the bill, and I have representatives of the sponsors, the LA Metro, here to testify in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Witnesses in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Michael Turner on behalf of the Metro Board of Directors. And as the Assembly member mentioned, the bill is is needed in order to move the implementation dates of our Express Lanes program. We're not expanding the amount of time that the program will be in place, but moving the actual implementation dates because we have a new start date. The two basic reasons for that are in order to allow some important physical improvements to be in place, such as an additional lane on the 10 freeway and improvements to the intersection where one of the projects ends, and it will also allow us to do a more thorough environmental study of the project so that we can do a much more thorough evaluation of a program that is very new to Los Angeles County. And as the Assembly member mentioned, this will allow us to retain $210 million in federal funds. That is about 50 years worth of bus money from a normal federal appropriations process. So it's very important, and I would like to thank Assemblymember Ng for his support in allowing us to get the money, number one, and hopefully allowing us to keep the money through this legislation. Thank you.
Other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Members of the committee, is there Senator Harmon?
Whereabouts geographically are the improvements going to be made on the 10? And will it conflict with the improvements on the west side that just started on the 405? I noticed when you go through the pass, they're narrowing those lanes, and then, so is it down by where the 405 and the 10 intersect, or is it somewhere else?
No, it's Stephanie Wiggins with Metro. It is actually somewhere else. The improvements for the 10 are between the 605 and the 710 freeway.
Thank you.
In
That's
both
all
directions.
I need to know.
Bill's been moved by Senator Kehoe. Not hearing any other questions. Assembly member, would you like to close?
Respectfully request an aye vote.
Will the secretary please call the roll? AB 1224.
Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, I. Huff. Ashburn. Aye. Ashburn, I. DeSaulnier. Harmon. Aye. Harmon, I. Kehoe. Aye. Kehoe, I. Oropeza. Pavley. Simidian. Simidian, I. 5-0. Huff, I. 6-0.
Bill has 6 votes, sufficient for passage, but we're going to place the bill on call and for the absent members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ng has another bill.
Assembly member, AB 2701.
Yes.
Item number 28, members.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and members, and thank you to your committee staff for its work. This bill, AB 2701, will put smiles on faces of children and families everywhere. What this bill does, it for the first time will clarify that if a playground is deemed a historical site, that it will be then afforded the ability to rehabilitate and make safe the playground equipment according to the state's historical building code section. This bill is important because in my district there's an amazing children's park known as La Laguna, complete with a giant whale, an octopus, and many amazing sea creatures of gigantic proportions designed 35 years ago by a famous artist. This playground, which you can probably see parts of, was listed in the California Register of Historic Places. Now,
who was the famous artist, Mr. A?
The famous artist was Benjamin Dominguez. And you can Google that, and I should do a better job of knowing that. But what you should know is that the local Parks and Recreation, local city council, in attempting to bring the playground up to code, felt that their only alternative was to destroy the playground in order to make it safe, because they were confused as to whether there were alternatives available that were accorded historic buildings, as we all know. That's a no-brainer. But a playground, that was a question mark. Because current laws is ambiguous as to whether parks can qualify as historic sites, this bill will clarify that once and for all. This bill allows the city to use the flexibility envisioned by the State Historical Building Code to bring the park up to modern-day playground safety standards so that safety is not sacrificed, but instead that flexibility is accorded the same way we accord historic buildings.
Witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Members of the committee?
Mr. Eng, would you give us a little more information? Is it just the bureaucracy and cost concerns that has the Livermore Recreation District opposed?
We've been told that they were opposed because of the safety concerns, but that has been addressed because in a historic building, you have the same safety concern issues. You still have to bring it up to code. You're just given alternative other options in your ability to do that.
Okay, I'll move the bill.
Bill's been moved by Senator Kehoe. Would you like to close?
Respectfully request a historically aye vote. I'll be hysterical, you be historical.
Will the
And for the record, Mr. Chairman, by a famous assembly member, just so we're clear, not just a famous artist, but a famous assembly member is asking us for that historical vote. So.
Will the secretary please call the roll of this famous assembly member's historic legislation?
Lowenthal.
Maybe aye. Aye.
Lowenthal, I. Huff. Huff, I. Ashburn. DeSaulnier. Harmon.
Aye.
Harmon, I. Kehoe.
Aye.
Kehoe, I. Oropeza. Pavley. Semidian. Semidian, I. 5-0.
Assembly member, that bill has 5 votes, sufficient for passage, but we're going to place it on call for the absent member. Thank you.
Next, we have item number 15 is Jeffries.
Next item is item number 15. Assembly member Jeffries, thank you for waiting. And welcome to the committee. You now see the way the Senate operates.
He's actually hung out at conference committee before.
He actually came to conference. He just likes visiting with us. Well, it's always a pleasure to see the Vice Chair of Assembly Transportation. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bill 1740. Members of the committee, of the 23 million registered vehicles in California, this bill will allow 750 specialty constructed custom kit cars to register each year. The current law only allows for 500 vehicles to register each year. DMV has already indicated that we are at nearly 480 custom kit cars have already been registered, and that we're clearly going to blow through or to the cap if we do not make some adjustments. The bill you have before you today is a result of a bipartisan compromise in the other house. The bill was originally drafted at a much higher level, and with the recommendations of my colleagues across the aisle, we agreed to a significantly lower cap and brought it down to 750. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I do have some support here today, as we've heard from all corners of the state from supporters of this bill. Good. I think we should hear, before there are any questions, from witnesses in support and those, if there are any, in opposition. So witnesses in support. Welcome.
Okay, my name is Dave Schaub. I represent the Bay Area Roadsters, also the Good Guys Car Association, and the NSRA, which I'm a member of. Anyway, I'm here today basically to ask you for an aye vote, answer questions, and hopefully give you some insight on what a kit car is. I know that there's been some discussion that there's a lot of various definitions for what kit cars represent. Also, there's some differences in opinion in how you regulate smog, how it's calculated, and so forth, and I do have some information about that as well. So that's it for me.
Well, we'll get back to you. We'll ask some questions, so don't go away. Other witnesses in support?
I'm support. My name is David Cahill, C-A-H-A-L. I'm the division director for the National Street Rod Association, And one of the states I represent is California, which is the highest number of street rodders in our organization. And we'd certainly like to have your support in this bill. And I can answer any questions. Also.
Well, then you stay put too. Yeah. Other witnesses in support?
Yes. My name is Bob Stearns. I'm with the Association of California Car Clubs, and we're totally in support of this bill.
Good. Other witnesses in support?
Thank you. My name is Vic Repstead. I represent the Roman Angels Car Club, 200 members in Grass Valley and their spouses, and we support this.
Thank you. Other members in support? Are there witnesses in opposition?
They went home.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. No, they're coming in droves. They're driving in. How you doing, Assemblyman? Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brendan Tuig on behalf of the California Air Pollution Control Officers Association. We respectfully oppose the bill because we think it will significantly increase air pollution. According to the California Air Resources Board, the typical kit car pollutes 200 times more per mile than a 2005 passenger vehicle. That means that it would take less than a weekend for a car like this to pollute as much as it takes a regular car all year. Current law already allows 500 of these highly polluting vehicles to be registered and exempt from smog check every year. And then once the 500 vehicle cap is reached, then more kit cars are allowed to register. It's just that they have to meet smog. This bill allows 250 more cars to be exempt from smog check every year. And once you're out of the smog check program, you're out forever. Proponents argue that kit cars, and they've argued that kit cars are seldom driven. We think if you spend $80,000 or more on a car, you're going to drive it. And we also think that you can afford to make sure the car is clean and not polluting our air. Also, CAPCOA is opposed on the grounds that this bill creates a loophole for kit car owners who illegally registered their vehicles to avoid emissions requirements, registration fees, and also sales taxes. In 2008, Assemblymember Emerson authored AB 619, which created an amnesty program for kit cars who illegally registered their cars. That bill was in response to an Attorney General's investigation on kit car fraud. In order to be granted amnesty from prosecution, vehicle owners who wish to participate in the amnesty program have to do two things. They have to pay what they owe, and they have to clean up their cars. And AB 1740 allows 250 more cars every year to sidestep the amnesty program without paying what they owe for breaking the law or cleaning up their dirty vehicles. So, Mr. Chairman and members, we think it makes sense to actually require these cars to meet smog, and we think we should be strengthening, not weakening, efforts to cut pollution from the highest polluting vehicles, so we're opposed to the bill.
Thank you. Certainly, Senator Harman.
Yeah, I had a question about your statement that the moving under this bill from 500 to 750, which is an increase of only 250 vehicles, would, I think I wrote your comments down, significantly increase smog pollution.
Yeah.
I don't see, I mean, we got 24 million cars in California, and we're going to add 250 ones that pollute. Now, I recognize that can be done every year.
Right. So it
just seems to me it's de minimis. I mean, by definition, it's not going to affect significantly in any fashion the smog pollution, air pollution problem we have in California.
Well, the issue...
because it's so small. Help me with that.
Through the chair.
Through the chair.
While 250 cars doesn't sound like a lot, the fact that they produce 200 times more pollution per mile is what makes it significant. And these cars are out driving on spare the air days when our air is at its worst, and we still we don't see what the public policy argument is for allowing these cars to be exempt from smog in the first place. I mean.
Wait a second, we'll get to that. Let's just hear. There was a question that was raised to the witness in opposition. Witnesses had an opportunity to talk. Let's hear from other and then we'll get back to.
All right. Well, you've answered my question, and I would just argue or claim or state whatever you want. It's just de minimis. I mean, 250 cars out of 24 million.
Well, he gave it his best shot. Next witness in opposition.
I thought I was going to get you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members. Bonnie Holmes-Jen with the American Lung Association in California. And we're also opposed to this bill. We just think it's the wrong direction for the state to be going. We need to be strengthening the smog check program and getting more emission reductions to improve air quality and public health, not expanding loopholes. This particular loophole, we think it's unfortunate that the state allowed this loophole in the first place. And as you've heard, these vehicles pollute up to 200 times more than a vehicle under modern standards. And so we certainly don't want to expand the loophole. As you know, smog levels are causing thousands of hospitalizations every year for lung illnesses and cardiac illnesses, and this would only exacerbate that problem. And just want to, again, point out that there are engines available and retrofits available that meet modern smog standards, so there isn't a need to allow this loophole. We think it's a wrong public policy, and we urge a no vote.
Thank you. Other witnesses in opposition?
Bill McGavin with Sierra Club, California, opposed for the same reasons as the Lung Association.
Thank you. Other witnesses, just state your name.
Very well. Chris Morphus, Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District, aligned with KEPCO as well as the other opponents of this bill.
Thank you. I have some questions for the author. While I like the idea of kit cars, what I've learned is that the range of new kit cars can range from anywhere from $80,000 to $85,000, and I've heard as high as $450,000 for kit cars. So we're talking about very expensive cars. I have two questions about that. So now we're talking about people are investing a great deal of money in a car that's specially created. We know that to retrofit one of these cars, if you're already spending between $85,000 and $450,000 to meet smog check, costs anywhere from $6,000 to $6,500 to meet standards. Why, if you're spending that much money, why don't you put to meet the requirements of smog check? That's one question. Second question is, GM has now come out with a kit car engine that meets all California's air quality requirements that cost between $8,000 and $10,000 just the engine. Why aren't we promoting other manufacturers to come out with engines also like GM that meet the standards? Why are we moving in the way of exemptions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could, there's a couple of points in all of this and several assumptions. And I apologize, I don't have copies, but this one page is CARB's entire study of the issue. One page. And it starts off with two paragraphs that say assumptions. These assumptions skew the entire argument that you heard before you today. These assumptions are based on the pollution levels, based on certain vehicles, based on certain motor sizes. These assumptions don't play very fair when you have an agenda to try and make these kit cars look like they're some sort of evil individuals out on the road. They take into account that all 2006 models, they use an average of all 2006 passenger vehicles to determine the standard level of emissions. And so they take the average of the V4 and the V6 and the V8, and then they say that average establishes the benchmark standard. But when they go to the kit cars, they say we're going to take a 1965 V8, and we're going to compare that to the 2006. Well, of course you're going to have a different standard and a different level of emission. So do you have a V6? Do you have a V8? Do you have a 2-barrel? Do you have a 4-barrel? They all impact the level. So for us to sit here today and say all kit cars are created equal, all kit cars custom vehicles pollute at the same levels is a gross misrepresentation of the kit cars that you and I have all seen in our neighbors' garages and at the car shows. And many of you can rest assured that the custom vehicles that are in our neighbors' garages, they did not spend $400,000 for their vehicle. They probably didn't even spend $80,000 for the vehicle. They probably bought it for about $20,000 or $30,000 and have been working on it for 2 years to try and get it ready for the road, and they will not take it out if it's raining. They will only take it out when the sun is out, and it's probably going to be in a parade or a car show. So I think the statements that we've heard from some of the opponents that they're going to cause, incredible levels of pollution are grossly exaggerated. The other statements that were also made about the fee levels. When they register their vehicles, they're going to pay their fees. The state of California is not going to miss out on registration fees. If they sit in their garage because they cannot become registered because they can't put all the smog on it, we don't get any fees that way. And I apologize, I only had 2 of these to pass out on the side. If you look at these vehicles, you have to ask the practical application. Where can I put the smog equipment on these vehicles? Where can we put the catalytic converter that won't cause this fiberglass body to burn up? Where can we put all the smog equipment on these vehicles that don't have enough room? The practical application is you can't do it on these types of vehicles. And again, as was raised, there's 23 million cars on the road in California.
Are you saying that all the other kit cars that do not fit into to the 500 exemption, that we have not had any other kit cars in California that have been retrofitted?
I'm not sure I understand the question, Mr. Chair.
When you're saying where do we put this, that there are a large number of kit cars that have retrofitted. How did they do that? We know that there are kit cars that have been retrofitted.
Yes, and if I could have some of my actual expert witnesses who
because
actually
that's the
own
question
them.
that we're trying to understand. We know that some are retrofitted.
The kit car ranges anywhere from when I was 15 years old, my father and I built a first dune buggy. Okay, and that's what you'd kind of call the grandfather of kit cars. It was a Volkswagen base, Volkswagen engine. We put a body on it that was a steel body at the time. And we went down to DMV, and they did it under special construction because they said, well, it's a special built car. And so we got it licensed, and that was the end of it. It was no big deal. But they range anywhere from Volkswagens to Porsches to, they even have Lamborghinis that are kit cars, okay? But to say that you're going to put a GM V8 motor in a Porsche, it doesn't make sense. So what the Porsche guy does, he finds somebody that has a wrecked Porsche motor, let's say, that was sitting in the garage and the guy couldn't afford to build it because it's going to cost all kinds of money. He buys it really cheap at a swap meet, takes it home, and he saves it, thinking that maybe someday he's going to build that kit car. Okay, so he saves his money, he builds it, he buys the parts and everything else. He puts $3,000 into this motor. He buys this kit car and proceeds to put, hundreds of hours into this thing, paints it, does the whole works. And now that's his car. It's his dream. So, the idea of putting a V8 or having, the 32 Roadster, not everybody is in that category. There are people that want to build a Lakes Modified, let's say. They'd put a 4-cylinder in it, probably a hopped-up Model A motor from the 20s. They'll put speed equipment on it that was period perfect for the 20s because he wants a car that speaks perfect 20s. Same thing with a guy from the 30s or 40s or 50s. A guy with a 50s car is going to put white walls on it. He's going to have tuck and roll interior, these sort of things. There's fiberglass cars, there's steel cars, there's hand-built cars, guys that sit down with, a hammer and a bag and beat out aluminum to form a body.
But you do acknowledge that maybe not as many as you would like, maybe it does, but there are cars that have been retrofitted in terms of...
Certainly, and I'll tell you, I have one of them that I built a 1941 Cadillac for my wife. We put one of those GM motors in it. Okay. But I have 3 other cars that I have a 1931 Model A Ford that is a 50s style, and it has an early model V8 in it with 3 2s on it, and a quick change rear end and 5-speed. Anyway, but it all.
Why didn't you say this at first?
Anyway,
because my dad built the custom cars. It wasn't me.
It comes down to personal preference,
Yes.
and it runs the gamut. And yes, you have the cars that are $400,000, but you also have the guys that he scrimped and saved and went to swap meets and traded and did all kinds of stuff, and he built a car for $10,000. That is to him is his pride and joy. So, we have all of that. And I'll guarantee you, if you go to a car show and you look at most of the cars for sale, they range anywhere from $20,000 to $25,000. And another point I wanted to make, too, and this is back to the smog thing, I just wanted, going through the committee and being part of this thing, and they were talking about this pollution, this 200 number, I was upset because everybody that I know that owns one of these cars and drives it down the road, they're very proud of them. The last thing in the world they want to do is have some big puff of smoke going down the road. I mean, that's just, you don't do that. You don't even get them wet, let alone, have oil leaks or anything else. So I contacted a friend of mine, anyway, and come to find out, this guy has a guy that his company manufactures all of the smog equipment that they use for testing all the cars across California. This guy's name is Robert Schrader. He's with Bridge Analyzers, and he's in Alameda, California. So I sent him the information. I said, can this happen, that you're pumping out this kind of pollution? And his deal right back is absolutely no. He says it's bogus, the whole lot of it. And then he came down and he says, if it was polluting that kind of numbers, for one, the thing wouldn't even run. And the other thing is that the hydrocarbon number that they have here said it would have to have so much advance into this thing, it would be so lean it would almost melt. So I don't know where they're coming up with their figures. Usually the state of California requires 5 gases that you have to test for. They haven't given us one of those.
Well, let's find out. Is there someone here from ARB? Let's come on up. You've heard the discussion that the numbers don't make any sense. What do you have to say for yourself?
Well, there's been Rob Oglesby representing the Air Resources Board. We're not having a position on this bill, but we've been the subject of a lot of inquiry about just how dirty are kit cars
and
how much
really
they
the
pollute.
issue.
So I can respond to that.
That's that we're raising.
The one-page study is really just a calculation. We have an MFAC model that's based on thousands of real-world vehicles. We took a reasonable case of what an uncontrolled V8 engine carbureted would be and ran the numbers on that, and that's where you get the grams of hydrocarbon and NOx per mile. It doesn't include evaporative emissions, but it assumes that we're talking about a V8 engine that's carbureted old technology without additional pollution control technology. We put it all out there. In terms of the types of vehicles that are being registered, a large percentage of them are V8 engines carbureted. I've got some information that comes from the referee stations that were certifying kit cars that were registered in April and May. There are 20 vehicles, 17 of which are carbureted engines, and it looks like 12 are V8s. So, and these are, just to give you reference, there's one dune buggy on it, but Ford Cobra replica, Ford GT40 replica, Ford Cobra replica, Ford Cobra, Mercedes-Benz replica, Mercedes-Benz Porsche replica, Ford Cobra replica, Bugatti replica, Lotus replica, and more Ford Cobra. So the type of kit cars that we're actually seeing being registered under the program are these, high horsepower, high performance vehicles. Now, clearly,
it could be retrofitted.
I don't know that these vehicles can be retrofitted, and what that would be. So clearly, there are choices available that you can have cleaner technology or less controlled technology as the cars are made specially. But what we based our emissions assumption on, all cards on the table, is that it would be a old technology, uncontrolled engine that would be a V8 carbureted, not souped up. We didn't assume that it, for example, it had a turbocharger or a supercharger or a high-performance cam on it. These were uncontrolled V8 engines that were carbureted.
Thank you.
Senator Huff.
We've probably spent way more time on this than it deserves. I agree with Senator Harmon that the numbers are de minimis. I'm showing in our analysis 19.3 million automobiles registered in California. 330,384 were sold before 1976, and we don't have to smog them before 76. So even if you're looking at that lower number of 330,000, and we're asking to increase from 500 to 750, this is not a big deal. I mean, you're going to get more savings by going after lawnmowers than you will by these. And I don't suggest that. They're already doing that in South Coast Air Quality. But, I mean, I'm just trying to make a point by illustration here that we got bigger things, bigger fish to fry. And there is a heritage that we're not addressing here of keeping these old cars alive. We are a car culture, for better or for worse, but it is who we are, particularly here in California. You talk about these Cobras or the Bugattis. These are great vehicles. And yet, as they rust and you can't drive them anymore, the only way we keep that heritage alive is either a museum or the car shows, and that's through the kit cars. So I wholeheartedly support this bill and think we ought to be passing it on and then moving on to some other more important items today. That is a motion.
Motion by Senator Huff. Are there other members that wish to address the committee?
Just a quick comment, Mr. Jeffries. I won't be able to support the bill, but I think the cars are beautiful. And we see a lot of old cars in parades, which is something I do pretty regularly. And I know the owners love them. But I'm still stuck on if there are alternatives to the pollution levels, and you're building the car to certain specifications, whether it's the beauty of it or the era. If there's a reasonable way to make it less polluting, I'm sure you'd want to go there. So that's what I would want to encourage.
But the reason...
Sure, if you want to respond to
the
the chair.
Through the chair, you have to.
Could just 1 second.
Through the chair.
Oh, I apologize, sir. I'm just a car guy.
I'm just a chair.
I apologize. This is the first time I've ever done this, and I'm
and you're
nervous.
Doing a great job.
I'm nervous as heck. But I just like you'd all think this week, how many cars of the street rods or the classic cars did you see on your way to work today or yesterday or last week or the week before on the highway? You don't. It may be a Saturday and Sunday going to a show. This weekend, if you're in Pomona, you'll see a lot of roadsters going there because it's one of the biggest shows. The $80,000 cars are on trailers being pulled by a diesel truck that's putting out more pollutants than the car that's being driven. And that's one thing to keep in mind. But I would love to go to Pomona this weekend, a roadster show, and put up the NSRA booth and say that the Senate Transportation Committee passed 1740 with a big sign so everybody can know they could vote for everybody. I mean, it's, but I mean, really, seriously, we're just some car guys trying to keep this hobby going. And as far as the new motor, it just came out this year.
It came out this year.
This year, and so like me, I'm building a kit car, and the motor was not available for me to do it. So the car's almost done, and I mean, I want to get it registered and be able to drive it on the street because my wife and she's 83 years old, and she gets out and rides with me in those cars every place we go, and we just have a good time. And the people you meet at the car hobby are fantastic, and they donate a lot of money to charities.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add to answer
to answer the senator.
Answer the senator's question. The reason that most people, if they're going to build one of these cars, it's mainly because they want it in a certain era or whatever, and like I was saying, if you were building a Model T, let's say, you wouldn't put a late model motor in it. You just wouldn't do it.
I understand.
And mainly the reason is they don't drive them that far. Most people think that, they're going to go out and they're going to use it on a weekend, or they're going to take it once or twice a year to a certain favorite event or whatever. They'd like to make them better as far as the pollution and stuff goes. But for the amount of time that they drive them, it really is insignificant. So yeah. So anyway, that's it.
The bill has been moved by Senator Huff. I think we've had a full discussion of the issue. Would you like to close, Assembly Member?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members, for allowing us to present this. This is about California. This is what California has become so famous for, is our custom cars and our industries. And these vehicles are made in neighborhoods throughout California, and in garages and backyard garages. This bill got here today because it was a bipartisan compromise to get it here. The proponents of the bill agreed to a much, much, much lower level than what they originally envisioned. We all did. We couldn't get here unless it was a bipartisan effort. Nobody here sets before you and says these cars don't pollute. I mean, every car does. The fact is, these are not factory off-the-line cars. They have a little bit different makeup. They require a little bit more understanding in California because they are what California used to be: custom cars, beautiful cars, cars that individuals take pride in. And so I would ask that you recognize that a bump up of 250 vehicles is not going to cause the health-related problems. One forest fire of a couple thousand acres wipes out everything you could imagine related to the emissions that are being claimed from these vehicles. So I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Will the Secretary please call the roll? I believe it's just do pass.
Lowenthal.
No.
Lowenthal, no. Huff.
I do pass.
Aye. Huff, aye. Ashburn.
Aye.
Ashburn, aye. DeSaulnier.
No.
DeSaulnier, no. Harmon. Kehoe.
No.
Kehoe, no. Oropeza. Pavley. Pavley, no. Semidian. 2-4.
Bill has 2 votes. We'll place that bill on call.
Thank you.
Assembly Member Valines. Welcome.
Thank you.
AB 1781.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a bill that is, there's no pollutants from these cars. So let's start out.
We already heard Assemblymember Huber's bill earlier, so we know everything you're going to say.
Actually, I don't have to
So
say
we're
anything.
here just to evaluate how well you say it.
Yeah, I could be very, very minimal. I mean, as you know, you had a long discussion. I watched it on TV. I thought it was excellent. The same concerns and the same things you shared, we would want to fold into this bill. The bottom line is Fresno, to me, it is actually an air issue. We've got such bad air. This is a chance to do something that's a benefit, and that's what we're trying to do with the bill, and it's like Ms. Huber's and other bills.
We hope that you will take some of the issues, if this bill does pass, that were raised in there about the impact upon those people who are visually impaired.
Correct.
To deal with the issue in terms of sharing between neighborhood electric vehicles and bicyclists, signage.
Right.
How do you make a left turn when you're got to cut across traffic? All those kinds of issues.
Correct.
And Senator Papley also mentioned a few others. So we don't have to go through a great deal, because really what we're saying on this bill is similar to what the Huber bill did, and also what Assembly Member Leslie, I think when he was in the Assembly at the time, and he did Lincoln and Rockland, I think, at that time. And so, with that, are there witnesses in support?
No, our witnesses in support couldn't get out of Fresno.
Are there witnesses in opposition?
Drive it up in an NEV.
Yeah,
They're all coming back.
They're in a kid car.
They're in a kid car. They can't pass. You're going to hear the same witnesses again in opposition. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim Brown, California Bicycle Coalition. No need to cover the ground that we've covered before.
Not at all.
Enabling NEVs to operate on more public roadways shouldn't come at the expense of the safety of bicyclists or the environmental benefits of bicycling, and that's why we have concerns with this bill.
Thank you. And we wish, again, this bill will only go back. We are just setting the parameters. The bill will go back to the Fresno I think the transportation, is it the county or is it transportation commission? I don't know.
The transportation.
And they will actually frame the neighborhood electric vehicle ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, James Lombard on behalf of the California Association of Bicycle Organizations, and we oppose for the same reasons that these gentlemen do. I just wish that this committee would give them a little guidance to make sure that they do make this part of the subject matter as if or a language in the bill. They'd have to take those
Well,
actions.
I will tell you, this bill will have, I believe it has doesn't it have a sunset on the bill?
Yes, same as Allison.
Same, and if they don't deal with those as this bill comes back, we're going to let them set it up, but they have to report back on these very issues, and unless they address these issues, it will be a short-lived development.
Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Frank Welty from the California Council of the Blind. Again, similarly to our comments regarding AB 584, we do oppose the bill unless it's amended to include language protecting the safety of blind pedestrians with respect to the quiet car problem, as I mentioned earlier. I would just add that we have presented language to the author's office to address our concerns. It's actually language that's taken from the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Act that's currently in Congress, so it would bring the language in line with that bill, and we'd like to see that language in there. If that's not possible, and if it were, we would strongly urge that the actual implementation of the NEVs on Fresno roads be delayed until the federal standards are in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the committee? Senator Pavlik.
Fellow Fresno State alumni. Was there a particular area in Fresno? I was just curious where these would go. I couldn't envision Blackstone or.
Well, no, I mean, the growth areas are out to the west side of 99, up the north
so
side.
up at past Bullard and Herndon up there.
Used to back then be all fig orchards, is now not.
So in the more suburban.
Yeah, and we had just to kind of follow up with that. We did a local transportation bond about 3 years ago, and part of that bond was determining where bike routes and all those things would be, and actually have a dedicated portion of the bond, and that sort of dovetails with this. So they really have done it in the outgrowing areas where they want to put a lot of these. And then there's a good example too, the development by Granville Homes. What's the name of it? I should know. It's Copper River. That huge development has in its development has the NEV lanes and the bike lanes with it.
Oh, integrated in the
development, and they're working with the city too. So we really are working with all groups. And I think it'll be a good report.
Very good.
Fresno far advanced from the rest of the state.
As usual.
Who would have known? Senator Kehoe, you have a
Just, Mr. Valens, I didn't hear the other bill, so I looked at both bills because I was concerned when I saw the Bicycle Coalition was opposed. And we've got a very active Bicycle Coalition in San Diego, which I hear from regularly, including last night. So in this neighborhood in Fresno, you're saying they have an NEV lane and a bicycle lane. It's not the same territory?
I don't want to I'm not positive if they've created how they did it, but I know that they've created the separate NEV lanes and they do have the bike lanes because it's meant as a pedestrian type of development. That's how they built it. But I wouldn't want to say that I know exactly how the city's going to do it until the plan is done. But the point that you share is that the community's been very involved in it because that's important.
I just, I'm torn between electric vehicles, which I think are a great idea, and I applaud you for trying to promote that. But our bicycle riders are, feel like they're being crowded out in so many different areas. As there's more and more car and vehicle traffic, it's less and less safe for them to be on the road, and there's less and less room for them to be on the road. So I would hope both with this bill and the Huber bill that there could have been more discussion prior to it getting to the second house. And I'm wondering why. Maybe I should ask the bicycle man. Where did he go? Yep. What's the discussion's been like so far? You have to sit on the mic.
Sure. You want to sit here? Or right here.
The mic, excuse me?
Yes.
So how have you participated in discussions thus far?
Well, we've been stating this position all along that we are uncomfortable with the lack of minimum standards for the safety of bicyclists as it relates to shared facilities. And really, it's just the issue of shared facilities. And by that I mean the issue of segregated, separate Class 2 NEV bike lanes. There's nothing in either of these bills that prevents the implementation of very narrow and dangerous lanes, and that's our concern. And we think these bills could be amended to address that concern, but so far we haven't persuaded anybody else of that.
The bills calls for the locals to be able to adopt a plan for electric vehicles.
That's exactly what it does.
But
for neighborhood electric vehicles, those are small ones.
Right.
Maybe not in size and for speed.
But without protecting the bicycle lanes that the state statute already approves, and how are we to ensure that bicycle lanes are going to stay usable and safe?
Well, one of the reasons is there's Rockland and Lincoln, and now if we pass this, there is El Dorado and Amador, not El Dorado, Amador, and now Fresno. These are just demonstration projects
Lots of them.
with reports back to the legislature.
I think
they all sunset.
Yeah, I think I'm going to wait. I really would like to see more substantial, something specific that make sure that bicycle riders will be able to safely travel on our roadways with multiple kinds of vehicles. We had, this is similar to the Segway discussion. Lots of different kinds of vehicles, usual and unusual, and I am sympathetic to bicyclists feeling like they have less and less territory to.
Senator, I struggled also with that issue, and that's why if you look in your analysis, there's amendment number 3, which we were thinking about, that said we may wish to amend the bill to clarify that dedicated NEV lanes may not be for joint use of NEVs and bicycles. And I thought that was too much for us to micromanage it, even though I am very sympathetic to this issue, and I think you are raising the critical issue when we have both the need to move towards electric vehicles, especially neighborhood ones, which cannot go on the thoroughfare with streets that are above 35 miles per hour. So we have to put them in dedicated lanes, and we know that some of these may not be wide enough to accommodate a separate bicycle. So we agreed not to push, but we are also very sensitive to this issue, and
so
I can just say I came down on the side of not requiring or not requesting that they take that amendment.
So that amendment wasn't taken in the Huber bill or in the Vallines bill?
No, because it wasn't taken in the other bills, and and so I wanted to see that we get the reports back before we did that. But I understand. I think these are the critical issues.
And the report comes back when? 16, you said?
Well, different reports come back at different times.
I think in 14, right?
In 14.
In 16, the program goes away.
Other members?
Real briefly.
Senator Pavley.
Just Senator Kehoe on it. Part of the difficulty is each area is so different.
Right.
Some areas that are rural and there's no conflict with all this competing traffic, others not. And so I know when we were looking at this in Agoura Hills, we really relied on the expertise of our local law enforcement and be able to, accommodate bike lanes, but also were the roads wide enough to accommodate neighborhood electric vehicles as well. They didn't like the mixture of roads and left turns, so they convinced the city council not to
allow the left turn.
Yeah,
and those are another issue.
But that's a local issue depending upon your traffic
and that's what I felt also.
Left turn should be banned in many ways.
Hey, how about right turns?
Always allowed.
Other members wishing to? Is there a motion on the bill? Bill's been moved by Senator Huff. Would you like to close, Assembly Member?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just, in closing, to address a couple of concerns. I really respect your view. I would say that actually overriding all of this, so to me, is actually clean air. I mean, having a child who suffers from asthmatic problems and we've actually had to move because of the air, that is the more important issue. And that's what we're trying to get to, is moving forward that way. And, you know, in terms of, so in all respect, it's really not about just the biking community. I think it's about health and being cleaner. And that's really important to me, why I gravitated towards the bill. But having said that, and I think Ms. Pavley said it best, you know, local areas really do these things different. We've really worked very aggressively with the biking community, not just me, and I mean, I'm not saying that selfishly, in the local bond where we had dedicated dollars, and it doesn't usually happen for biking, for the biking community, to make sure we had lanes for it. Our community's been very aggressive about saying, let's work together and make that work. And I am convinced that when this report comes back, Senator, that you would see it and say, okay, they addressed the specific needs of that, because that has been a big focus of the community. I'm just, if I thought it wasn't, you know, we'd be having a different discussion. But I'm sure that you'll see that it goes very well, because you guys have been very involved locally in making sure that we do that well. And so I'm convinced that you know, you'll see that in retrospect. And so I just think it's a great bill, and I think it's a good way to move towards a cleaner environment and better air for our kids.
And I'll take that as your close.
Yes, sir.
Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, I. Huff. Huff, I. Ashburn.
Aye.
Ashburn, I. DeSaulnier. Harmon.
Aye.
Harmon, I. Kehoe. Kehoe, no. Oropeza. Pavley.
Aye.
Pavley, I. Semidian. 5-1.
The bill has 5 votes sufficient for passage, but we're going to place that on call for the absent member.
Appreciate it. Thanks to the committee.
Okay, we have item number 18.
Item number 18, Assembly Member Saldana.
Very simple, straightforward bill.
We heard that earlier about a bill that took an hour. What do you think?
So good evening, members.
Touch it, you'll get lead poisoning.
Mr. Amiano's already had a field day with these stamps.
Oh, yeah?
No pun intended.
Enough levity? For now.
For now.
Just for now. Welcome, Assembly Member.
Thank you. Thank you, members. The bill I am presenting right now would allow for the use of synthetic turf in common interest developments, so long as it does meet the standards that have been set in place by the Homeowners Association. And landscape irrigation makes up a significant cost of many of these associations. Water suppliers statewide are committed to meet certain reduction goals, and using something like artificial turf will greatly improve our chances of reaching those goals by 2020. This bill is being sponsored by the San Diego County Water Authority. They believe that saving water by putting in synthetic turf in more residential areas in San Diego County could conserve up to, many tens of thousands of gallons annually, and also the cost of the maintenance. So I do have some samples, as you can see, that are going around, and I have a witness here in support of the bill.
Witnesses in support?
Jonathan Clay on behalf of the County of San Diego County Water Authority. We're the sponsors. Just a little bit of background. Water use for homes, 70% of that's typically for outdoor water use. As Assemblymember Saldana mentioned, all jurisdictions across the state are going to be complying with the 20% water reduction by 2020. Trying to address outdoor water use is a huge issue. We've worked on this issue in years past in terms of trying to make sure that low water using plants are allowed at HOAs. We've run into some problems in San Diego where, because artificial turf is not necessarily a real plant, that HOAs have banned it. And the reason we've run into this problem is there's rebate programs for residents to take out turf, replace it with with artificial turf. And so this was raised to our board. They thought this was a good idea for a bill. As we're struggling with water conservation, for Senator Key's familiar with this factoid, in San Diego, we've accommodated all of our growth since 1990, all population with conserved or recycled water. So just with that in mind, one point I'll bring up, I know there's been some concerns about lead in grass or lead in this artificial turf. I can't really speak to the scientific basis of whether there is lead or not, but this product is sold in California at Home Depots, Sam's Clubs. You or I can buy it. Public agencies have been installing in San Diego. From the Water Authority's perspective, we don't understand why there should be HOA should be allowed to ban the use of it. That's why we made sure we put provisions in the bill that says there's design criteria. We completely understand there's consistency themes and other things that people want to try and maintain at condo associations or other places like that. So we felt that this bill was a reasonable approach in terms of trying to balance that.
Other witnesses in support?
Hi, I'm Rosie Thompson with the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. We had sponsored a similar measure last year to facilitate conservation, and we're in support of this measure as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Brian Reese, representing the Empire's Utility Agency. We are also in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Witnesses in, any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Carrie Mazzoni for the Executive Council of Homeowners. Unfortunately, we are opposed to this bill. We did support the Lieu bill of last year that allowed for low water use plants. We feel that this bill goes a bit too far, given the wide variety, and I know there were amendments taken that address the governing documents. We feel strongly that common interest developments are self-governing and that current law is adequate to address this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Other witnesses in opposition?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Skip Daum on behalf of the Community Associations Institute. In addition to the local authority and bills passed just last year relative to conserving water, etc., I'm going to address some issues that you may not have heard specifically with regard to that product that's been touched and handled here today. Yeah, and this committee seems to be concerned about pollution and environmental quality, and let me explain why that's a very salient issue relative to this particular product or many of those products. So Assembly Bill 1793, it really does sound benign, but it fails to take into account the numerous studies and tests of artificial turf that have proven it to far exceed Proposition 65 levels of lead chromate. And the previous witness said that he thinks Home Depot sells the product. It does not. It stopped selling the product. Costco has also been the subject of some concern in this area. Unfortunately, this bill will unintentionally expose children and women to hazardous materials, some 94 chemicals and 200 volatile organic compounds in all. Our research indicates that aniline, benzene, ethylbenzene, formaldehyde, naphthalene, styrene oxide, and toluene, as well as zinc, are found in these products, not just one product. In essence, the measure is a statutory stamp of approval to install products that have been scientifically tested and found to be hazardous. Now, the Center for Environmental Health tested 150 samples and concluded as turf ages and weathers, lead is released in dust that can be inhaled and ingested. And this is because the filaments in the grass are encapsulated with a lead-based substance. And this partially explains why the Los Angeles and San Francisco elementary schools have removed their synthetic turf. The California Attorney General, the Solano County Attorney, the LA City attorneys sued 3 turf manufacturers over, quote, intentionally concealing, unquote, levels of lead that exceed Prop 65 levels. And the settlements, including substantial fines, are pending. And even if the products are eventually reformulated, they still need to be tested by the Public Health Trust, according to the Deputy Attorney General I spoke with last week. Lastly, this legislature just passed Senate Bill 1277 in 2008. And that bill requires the Integrated Waste Management Board, the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, and the State Department of Health to report later this year on the artificial turf health hazards. In short, in behalf of 40,000 communities which would not be able to restrict or prohibit installations of artificial turf for fear of hazardous materials, and the 9 million residents and owners, we ask that you not allow this measure to escape further analysis of the hazards artificial turf contains. Public policy in this area should not preempt the science and studies that have yet to be conducted on the supposedly reformulated product. Artificial turf is simply too dangerous, particularly to kids and females of childbearing age. We ask that you not support the measure.
Thank you. Are there other witnesses in opposition? Members of the panel wish to? Senator Ashburn.
Well, Mr. Chairman, just in addition to the things that Mr. Dahm has laid out, which I had not thought about before, but you know, with all the current concern about greenhouse gas emissions, this is not living. It is not carbon dioxide absorbing. And then I wonder, and maybe Mr. Dahm or the author can answer this, about the manufacture of the material. I mean, obviously there's a manufacturing process here that consumes natural resources, that results in emissions into the atmosphere, that then produces a product that is non-carbon dioxide absorbing, which adds to our greenhouse gas emissions, which lead to increased global warming, which lead to the catastrophes that befuddle all of us, including my ability to say the words. And so
you are willing to take a left turn?
I've taken many unusual turns lately. So does anybody have any thoughts on the greenhouse gas emissions?
Thank you.
I'll weigh into this with trepidation. Thank you, sir. With trepidation. Jonathan Clay, San Diego County Water Authority. I can't really speak to the manufacturing processes of artificial turf. What I can talk about is the energy use of water that's imported, especially into Southern California. Artificial turf uses roughly 90% less water than artificial turf. Yes, you do have to wash it down on occasion. A typical grass lawn uses about 46 gallons of water per square foot per year. And as those of us that work on water issues, and especially those of us that are south of the Delta and import water know, the largest user of electricity in the state of California is the pumps that pump the water south and then over the Tehachapi. So I think you can argue, yes, there may be some greenhouse gas emissions from the production of this product and how it's manufactured. You also have greenhouse gas emissions from the importation of water. There's even greenhouse gas emissions from trying to produce recycled water. So I think there's a lot of things to weigh here. I think from our perspective, this is a simple approach to trying to just promote more water conservation and trying to use less water within those areas that need to import it. So,
thank you. Are there other questions? Senator Harmon, and then Senator Huff.
Well, we're hearing from the water people that this is a good thing, and it is. It's going to reduce water consumption, but I don't know what to think or say about what Mr. Dahm says about potential for other types of pollution. Looking at the committee analysis, I don't see any reference to this issue in the committee analysis. There's none in the Republican analysis. I frankly would like to see some of the statistical data that you referred to. It wasn't submitted to me, or I don't believe to the committee. If there have been studies, I'm frankly impressed by the fact that Attorney General and various different district attorneys from around the state successfully pursued some type of lawsuit. I'd like to know the facts and details on that. So I am not prepared to support the bill until I receive that additional information. This might be a candidate to put the bill over, Mr. Chairman, until the committee can get that information, if that would be the desire of the committee.
And it was my unfortunate situation I couldn't get the research compiled in time to meet your committee analysis deadline, so that is my error. each of you does have this statistical, factual analysis of the case in your offices, and I'd be glad to give this to you right now.
No, that's all right.
Okay.
Senator Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the concerns you've expressed that have come to us today, but additionally, along the lines of what Senator Ashburn was saying, artificial turf is hotter in hot weather. Regular turf is cooler, so you have that going for you as well if you're worried about reflected heat and all of that. My principal concern, though, is just it's another slap at the face of local control. The reality is people that move into common interest developments know what they're getting into. They sign what they're willing to abide by. In many cases, they have very little green anyway, but they want it to look uniform. They want it to look nice. They all moved in there knowing that, and then we from the state come in and say, well, but if you don't allow this, then, you're terrible people. That's something they should be deciding basis economics. And as there's more incentives for AstroTurf, as there's more high-priced water, and some of the studies will come out, they'll make the decision that makes sense for their local communities. I certainly don't think we should be up here saying what they can use, what they can't use. I remember when we thought MTBE was a great thing to reduce pollution, we ended up polluting all our waters. So sometimes the unintended consequences ends up, because we have good intentions, doesn't mean the outcome necessarily gets us to where we want to go, or it doesn't have balancing unintended consequences. So I'm certainly not prepared to support this bill.
Senator Kehoe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say, Mr. Dom's concerns about the potential toxicity of the artificial turf caught my attention, and but it did come very late. And the way I read this bill, and that's not your fault. It seems like it's sort of a moving target with the retailers and others, and it should be pursued, but not, I don't think, in this bill. As I read the bill, it's about whether CIDs should be prohibited from banning this in their property, and I am with the County Water Authority on it. I think overall, all things considered, this turf is should be considered as a water savings, a water conservation method. I don't see acres and acres of it. We're not telling them they have to adopt it, but I think for a CID to say, no, we're not going to have any of it on our property is going too far the other way. So I'm prepared to support the bill. In fact, I'll move it if there's no motion yet.
The bill's been moved by Senator Kehoe. Anybody else? I, too, would like to say I was prepared, and I am prepared to support the bill today, but I was totally prepared until I've heard all of this, and it is a shock. It is quite surprising. I do believe, though, while now that the product is still or is legal, there are not prohibitions on it. There may be some investigations, as you pointed out, but it is still. I think that should be explored. But at this point, on this bill, I do not think we're at a point yet that we should, respond. Well, we should always respond to those issues around public health and public safety, and I think you have raised some very significant issues. But until I'm ready until I see more data, I, too, with Senator Kehoe, believe that the overriding issue is the water issue, and we have a water crisis in the state, and I'm prepared to support the bill today. But I would like to see further information as this bill moves forward, and if we did get, and I will be honest, if we did get serious kinds of concerns that really were a red flag, I would call this bill back to committee before, and I reserve. So I would still that right to call the bill back to committee, but I would like to see some of this data, which we don't have. We haven't seen it until today.
I just had a question on the data.
Senator Pavlik.
Just on that data, I had a question in the reports from the Integrated Waste Management Board. Mm-hmm. There is no Integrated Waste Management Board.
Again, all of this came to my attention after the analysis had been published, but my understanding is that there was a bill passed by the legislature last year or 2 years ago, and the report is from the Integrated Waste Management Board is due September 1st or 30th of this year or something like that. I think it's focused to some extent on the crumb rubber use in artificial turf. I'm not sure how much it will look at all of the issues that have been discussed today. And I have not had the time or the ability to talk to the department, which is also being transferred from the Integrated Waste Management Board to the Resources Agency to ascertain where they're at with the study. But I will follow up on that.
Drop through the cracks, because I would be interested in the report when it's available.
Mr. Chairman, if
The bill's been moved. Bill, and would you like to close?
Yes, thank you. Well, I think the information is forthcoming. It will give us a better idea. Also, this bill is not mandating or requiring an HOA to install this artificial turf. It's simply saying that they need to evaluate the quality standards, the design, if it meets their criteria, and I think that the information that is coming forward will help inform their final decision. What we're saying is they can't simply say, we won't even consider artificial turf if there are residents of an HOA that would like to have the option of installing it. And currently they could simply say, without any evaluation, we will simply deny people's request to install that, and I think that is inherently unfair for the people who may want to use that. As far as the lawsuits, those have to do with sports fields with very high use and the type of use that it is unlikely these types of associations would have sports fields that are being used by people for recreational intensive activities. So there are some differences in the information that's available and what is being proposed in a residential setting. So with all of that, I would ask for your aye vote today.
Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Huff?
No.
Huff, no. Ashburn?
No.
Ashburn, no. DeSaulnier? Harmon?
No.
Harmon, no. Kehoe?
Aye.
Kehoe, aye. Oropeza? Pavley? Semidian? Pavley, aye. Semidian? 3-3.
Bill has 3 votes. We'll place that on call for the absent member.
Okay, let's see. I see Lowenthal.
Ah, Lowenthal. Gone. No, there she is. No, she's right over there. Oh, Knight. No, Knight. AB 1927.
He was blocked over there.
Another. Should be a little easier.
Doesn't have to do with...
No turf.
No turf? It's not a kit car?
No, it's not a kit car.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The central theme of this bill is to protect the legitimate expectation of a homeowner that he or she could rent the unit or home in the future if that right existed at the time he or she purchased a dwelling in a common interest district development. CIDs are developments which allow individual owners the use of common property and facilities and provide for a system of self-governance through an association of homeowners. This measure would prohibit a homeowner association in a common interest development from amending, adopting, or recording a governing document to prohibit the lease or rental of a separate interest without 2/3 of the members' approval. In addition, AB 1927 requires that the 2/3 vote be cast by written ballot to ensure that all members of the association have an equal opportunity to have their voice heard. I'd like to thank the California Association of Realtors for sponsoring this bill, and we ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Witnesses in support.
Mr. Chairman, members, Dave Milton with the California Association of Realtors, and in the interest of brevity and your time here, this bill is a bill that all of you, that were here in 2008 voted for. That was Assemblyman Mullins' AB 2259. It did go through the legislature virtually unscathed. And the governor, however, felt that there was a little bit more tweaking that was necessary. We have so tweaked and created a voting process for the homeowners in the CIDs to verify that they want to create a restriction on rentals. Otherwise, that right will exist when you buy the home. And what we respectfully request is that all of you who voted for it in 08 would be more than happy to vote for it in 10. Thank you very much. Respectfully ask your aye vote.
Other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
Move the bill.
Bill's been moved by Senator Ashburn.
You have opposition.
I know there is opposition. But Senator Ashburn just jumped right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Again, Carrie Mazzoni for the Executive Council of Homeowners, and we regret that we need to oppose this bill. Again, we feel the current law is adequate. As Senator Huff spoke so eloquently previously, that these are self-governed communities. People know what they're getting into when they buy into them, and we feel there is the ability to make those determinations under the governing documents of common interest development, and we would ask for your no vote. Thank you.
If it's already existing, how does this bill impact if there's already existing prohibitions on rental units when you buy in? Right now, let's say I'm purchasing, and the common interest development already has. Does this bill affect that at all? Existing?
No, it shouldn't. It doesn't. No.
Right.
Yeah, this shouldn't affect that at all.
Mr. Chairman, this bill is drafted to go into effect on January 1st and only affect those changes that are made after January 1st. It also has a grandfather provision in it that if there are any existing voting provisions in place that are done by a written ballot.
Say they have something in their CC&Rs or something that says that this can be done by a majority vote.
Yes.
If
that was in place prior to when this bill was introduced, it is grandfathered in and is not affected by the bill.
And can you just explain a little bit how this bill is less strict than, let's say, AB 2259 Mullen, how it's different than Mullen bill?
Sure, certainly, Mr. Chairman. The AB 2259 was a straightforward, if you purchased a home and at the time you purchased it in a common interest development, there was no rental restriction, then as long as you owned the home, you were not subject to any subsequent change in the governance provisions that did restrict your right to rent. This bill says that you can move into it and there's no restriction, but if 2/3 of the folks by written ballot decide that for whatever reason, either finances or whatever, they want to restrict, then you would be subject to that restriction.
We, on the Democratic side, love 2/3 votes.
Yes, of course.
I have to tell you, it's one of our favorite things in the whole world.
I understand, Mr. Chairman.
Bill's been moved by Senator Ashburn. Are there any other witnesses? And so Senator Carmen.
If a owner already has the property rented, then the association votes by 2/3 to say you can't rent. Does that mean the owner then has to terminate the lease, or does that lease or rent continue on
They don't.
for some period of time? How is that handled?
That would clearly be a contractual issue, Senator, and obviously if there was a lease, a long-term lease involved, then that lease would not be overturned by any change of the governance provisions.
All right, thank you.
Fine. I thought you said that if a person was already leasing, then it would not be affected by this at all. Isn't it
And
what you're saying?
this only affects on a prospective basis after January 1.
So if somebody's so if they were already, then they. Is there a motion? The motion by Senator Ashburn. I believe Senator Ashburn already. Long time ago, Ashburn. Secretary, please call the roll.
Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, I. Huff. Huff, I. Ashburn. Ashburn, I. DeSaulnier. Harmon. Harmon, I. Kehoe. Oropeza. Pavley. Pavley, I. Simidian. 5-0.
Bill has 5 votes. It's sufficient for passage, but we're going to place that on call for the absent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now, Assembly Member Lowenthal, AB 2067. Another bill we've heard before. Always good to start with that. We liked it last year.
All of you.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. AB 2067 is a simple measure allowing the City of Long Beach to adopt an ordinance with the support of a traffic study to permit vehicles in the peninsula area of Long Beach to park in both directions on certain streets. AB 2067 passed out of the Assembly with no votes. I have reviewed and accept the committee's proposed technical amendments. I've been working to address the concerns of the CHP and will continue to do so as the bill moves forward. AB 2067 is sponsored by the City of Long Beach. Here with me is Christy Foy with the City of Long Beach. I'm asking for your aye vote.
Thank you. Christian Foy here on behalf of the City of Long Beach, and we have sponsored this bill in order to address the residents' concerns, and we have had extensive consultations with both Long Beach Police Department and the city's traffic engineer, and they do not foresee any detrimental effects in regard to this. In addition, we have agreed to conduct an independent traffic study of the parking situation prior to implementation of the bill. For all these reasons, we ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Witnesses in support? Are there any witnesses in opposition? We saw almost the same bill, yes. You know this block well, yeah. Yeah, I think originally Jenny did, and then Bonnie did. No, Bonnie did last year.
Yeah.
But I think
Jenny was on the committee last year.
Senator Ashburn. Witnesses in opposition.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Captain Brown with the California Highway Patrol. Our opposition from the patrol's position, we do have an approved oppose on the bill. However, that opposition existed based upon the outlines that have been prepared by your staff. They were very eloquently put in place. Our concerns are addressed not only just parking left-wheeled to the curb, but it has to do with the movement of backing that vehicle onto and across the roadway. Mm-hmm. The Assembly member has worked with us. Her amendments address our concerns, and we're in the process of working with her to help her get the study in place and to evaluate the safety of what they're attempting to do on this small scale. So we will be removing our opposition from the bill and working with the member to make sure that the study is done in a safe manner to discover whether or not this is feasible.
Good.
Move the bill.
Now Senator Ashburn moves the bill. Are there any other witnesses here? Members, the bill has been moved by Senator Ashburn. Assembly member, would you like to close?
I would appreciate your aye vote. Thank you.
Please call the roll, Secretary.
Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Huff?
Aye.
Huff, aye. Ashburn?
Aye.
Ashburn, aye. DeSaulnier?
We do everything backwards.
Harmon?
Aye.
Harmon, aye. Kehoe? Oropeza? Pavley? Pavley, aye. Semidian? 5-0.
Bill has 5 votes sufficient for passage. We'll place that on call for the absent members.
Thank you, Senator. Senators.
Oh, excuse me. That bill was as amended because you had accepted the technical amendment. So I just want to make for the record that we had that bill as amended.
Hill is here. Item number 23.
Item number 23. Assembly Member Hill.
Jerry, you're up.
This is about as close as you
I'm ever going to get that. You may be right, Senator.
This is it, right here.
Nice, Senator. Thank you, Mr.
Welcome.
Chair. Thank you. This bill is about ensuring a safe driving environment for motorists, pedestrians, and cyclists. AB 2245 creates a sound limit threshold of 110 decibels for aftermarket car horn systems. Aftermarket car horns can emit decibel levels of over 170 and are marketed in a way that's clearly not for the benefit of public health or safety. As a comparison, ambulance sirens are around 120 decibels. One of the producers of these products even has a YouTube video, and I have a sample of their website. It's entitled "Scaring People with a Train Horn," showing a car equipped with one of these devices driving around town, scaring pedestrians and drivers. Since existing law limits train horns to 110 decibels, And since the average vehicle horn is about 110 decibels, it is appropriate to set a limit for these aftermarket horns. In addition, current law limits vehicle exhaust systems to 95 decibels. These products can still be sold. The bill just ensures that these devices are emitting a reasonable sound and not creating an unsafe environment for drivers and pedestrians. And just as an example, on the website, it says clearly, it says, the air horns sold in this, may I read this, Mr. Chair?
Absolutely.
The air horns sold in this store reach sound levels above 150 decibels. Sounds at this level can be very startling and can even cause hearing damage. So that's, this bill is, I believe, necessary for health and safety, and it derived from a district issue related to the annoyance of train horns that evolved, and it actually we found were not train horns, but actually horns of this nature.
Assembly member, I think this is a worthy issue, and I appreciate where you're going on this, and by also specifying that sounds of greater than 110 decibels. I think that is unfortunate when someone does a horn, or I think that we should be. But right now we have on the law, existing law prohibits a horn from emitting an unreasonably loud or harsh. It is never enforced because no one has any equipment to enforce law enforcement. They just don't. It's never. We check. It's just not enforced because officers do not carry sound measurement devices. So, to me, we passed a bill before. I think it was a Senator Walters bill, which dealt with a different issue, but the amendment that I would suggest that you take, it's up to you to take, really dealt with the fact that since the bill, even though it's worthy, we can't enforce it. No, officers don't carry around this equipment, so how do we know whether it's 110 decibels or not? That I would think that a way of improving it would be to address the problem of unreasonably loud horns, to amend the bill to make it illegal to sell aftermarket horns that emit a sound greater than 110 decibels. If we made it illegal to sell it above that, then I think we would deal with your issues and we would be able to enforce it. Because I think that's what you're getting at. You're trying to, and so I would suggest that you, if we want a bill that will work. Now, I will probably, I'll be honest with you, even if you didn't take it, would probably support it anyway, but I don't think it's at all enforceable the way you have it. I would say we've already done this. The governor has signed it when we wanted a bill where we actually said, okay, if this really is unreasonable and this is allowed enough, let's not sell it in California. Let's make that illegal to sell these above that. I think that makes it a stronger bill, personally. And I would urge you to take that, but it's your choice.
Member Hill's call, but is there a way to phrase it either?
Well, he can work that out.
Decibel or not, because I'm understanding the CHP is perhaps coming up with some different options on how to measure things for other varieties.
So local law enforcement, who's going to be doing it? It's going to be
maybe.
We just know that they're not enforcing it at all.
Because it is an issue in some areas.
I don't mind it being both, either one or the other, or that we do both. I would think that. Because
I'm not sure.
I'm just saying I don't really believe that you would have a bill that would sound good. Because it wasn't above 110 decibels. That's why it would sound good. But it would, since we're not enforcing it anyway today, and we've checked, and we can check with it, that I would prefer to also look at saying if we don't want these aftermarket parts on our cars, let's not sell the aftermarket parts that are above 110 decibels. I think. Now, that may also be,
And it may be a problem with the Internet and purchasing them elsewhere, which is another difficult. But if I may, Mr. Chair, the enforcement currently is as an infraction. So if it were found to be in violation, it would be an infraction with a fine of, I think, over $100. In looking at it, it leaves this to local government. If there's a particular issue that becomes a nuisance in that city, a person who frequents it, for a person who lives in a neighborhood that's constantly doing that, then this gives local law enforcement the opportunity to to, just as they would with an exhaust system that exceeds the sound limit, to use whatever equipment is necessary. I know in the city that I come from, they have decibel meters that they use for sound at events that are too loud, at recreation events that are there, music events, and they would do that. So to me, it seems that in this way, in this manner, it allows them the flexibility to do that, leaves it as just an infraction.
Fine.
So
that's fine, because I'm just saying we already have on the books laws that say that unreasonable or loud or harsh sounds are against the law, and we do not find that there's anybody being cited for that at all. So now you're defining that at 110 decibels. I don't believe that that's going to be enforced either. But that's, I'm willing to go along with that. I still believe, though, that the other way to go at it is to say, if you don't want to sell it,
They couldn't sell them.
They couldn't sell them in California.
Well, but how does someone know, an enforcement officer, know, well, this horn is emitting too loud a sound and you can't sell it? I think you have the same problem with that as you do as the cop on the street can't tell.
Granted, yeah, I'm just trying to make it a bill that can be enforceable. I'm just saying that right now we're not enforcing it. If you want to move in that direction, that might be a help. But I'm not suggesting that this is an easy fix at all. Senator Huff.
In your attempt to objectify this, at what distance is the measurement taken? I don't see anything in there that just says no more than 110 decibels, but at where?
And you're correct. It doesn't say specifically the distance from there, but it's my understanding it's the same with the exhaust from an automobile. It's at the exhaust, as you're standing next to that. But there's no objective.
Like a locomotive is 100 feet in front of it at no more than 110 decibels. Right. But 100 feet is quite a bit different from being right next to
a car horn. And the purpose of the 110 near the vehicle is because generally people are not standing in front of a moving train as it's coming through a grade crossing. But well,
that's why they blow the horn sometimes. So they're not.
Someone is. So the goal here is that someone is standing at a crosswalk, walking across the street, and someone comes up behind them and blows that horn. So it's at the close.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to be supporting the bill anyway. I think for all the discussions that we've been having on this.
Yes, do we want to call up CHP? I don't think we need to call up CHP. Yeah.
No, I appreciate the concern and the enforcement issue, but I think this keeps it consistent with an exhaust horn, with an exhaust sound, and that seems to work in those particular cases where it's found to be offensive within a community. And that's when the enforcement would take effect. And we do have a punishment, as I mentioned, which is the infraction.
The bill's been moved by Senator Pavley. Would you like to close?
I respectfully would ask for an aye vote.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Huff?
No.
Huff, no. Ashburn?
No.
Ashburn, no. DeSaulnier? Harmon?
No.
Harmon, no. Kehoe?
Aye.
Kehoe, aye. Oropeza? Pavley? Pavley, aye. Semidian? 3-3.
Bill has 3 votes. We'll place that on call for the absent.
Mr. Chair, thank you, members.
We have Emerson. Item number 25.
Assembly Member Senator Emerson. Or Senator Assembly Member Emerson. Yeah, a senator is carrying an assembly member's bill? What is going on?
That's true, and I'm having the pleasure of seeing assembly bills for the second time on the Senate side.
You call this pleasure?
No comment.
It's 6:30. We've been here from 3 o'clock. Let's go.
Missing the Lakers.
All right.
Thank you, Chair and members. First, I would like to accept the suggested amendments in the analysis. Per comment number 3, we accept as authors amendments to limit the amnesty program to 1 year. We would like to give the Bureau of Automotive Repair and the Department of Motor Vehicles 6 months to develop any necessary regulations prior to the commencement of the one-year amnesty period. This bill is a cleanup measure to Assembly Bill 619, which was signed by Governor Schwarzenegger and would authorize DMV to administer a one-time vehicle registration amnesty program for vehicle owners who have previously registered their cars incorrectly. Vehicle owners who participate in this amnesty program are required to pay all back fees and taxes. As staff from the Air Resources Board and the Bureau of Automotive Repair have worked to implement AB 619, it became apparent that BAR lacked the proper legal authority to execute the ARB's suggested method of emissions testing for amnesty vehicles. This bill will simply give BAR the legal authority to give a tailpipe only examination in order to determine if the vehicle has been brought into compliance. AB 2461 will also extend the sunset for the original amnesty program due to the delayed implementation. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Senator,
Yes.
You mentioned that you were taking comment 3 in the analysis, limiting the amnesty period to 1 additional year, but delay the start date by 6 months to give BAR and DMV time to develop the regulations. We'd also mentioned, I wonder, that we requested another amendment, given the year that the vehicle was built and the exemption from smog check,
Yes,
given the difficulty.
76, yes, absolutely.
You'll
I
accept that one?
yes,
Okay,
sorry
thank
about
you.
that, yeah.
Okay. So with those amendments, the bill has been moved by Senator Pavley.
We took out the grandfathering part?
Yes, we just took that out. He
Yes,
accepted
yes.
that as an amendment also. Witnesses in support.
Mr. Chairman, John Brueggemann on behalf of the Special Equipment Market Association, and we support the bill.
Witnesses in opposition. Bill's been moved by, would you like to close?
No, I'll just
Sit here for another half an hour and
no, it seems
keep
like
us from
it's-
watching the Laker game?
seems like it's going the right way, and I'm just going to write it.
Okay. Bill's been moved by Senator Pavley with amendments, Amendment 3 and Amendment 4 from the thing. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Huff.
Aye.
Huff, aye. Ashburn.
Aye.
Ashburn, aye. DeSaulnier. Harmon. Harmon, aye. Kehoe. Kehoe, aye. Oropeza. Pavley. Pavley, aye. Semidian. 6-0.
Bill has 6 votes, sufficient for passage. Is
Thank
this
you.
your first bill as a senator?
No.
As a senator?
No, I've had a couple others.
All right, that's too
Thank you
bad.
very much.
But we're going to place that bill on call for the absent member.
Next, we have Huffman, item number 26.
Assemblymember Huffman. Have you enjoyed your time watching us?
It's been a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Evening.
And maybe morning. Where is Assemblymember Bradford? If he will wake up the Assemblymember. He's been here for all the time.
The whole time. Senator, I think I have a fairly non-controversial bill for you. At least it has no opposition, and it takes a modest step towards a problem that's a very serious issue, actually, and that is the problem in teenage drivers in California and the fact that they continue to die and suffer serious injuries and cause accidents for others at a rate much greater than any other. Back to the horn. Much greater than any other group. And the evidence shows that overwhelmingly the cause of most of these accidents is distraction for these young drivers. So here's one of the problems. Under current law, in order to get a license, a teen has to complete 30 hours of driver education, either in a classroom or on the internet. And then they go to the DMV, take a written test, and at that point they receive an instruction permit. And then they have 6 months where they can drive under supervision, and during that period certain things need to happen, including they need to have 6 hours of driving with a professional. And at the end of all of that, they can go and apply for their driver's license. This bill takes the modest step of simply asking that 6 hours of driving with a professional happen at the front end of the teen's driving. And I think what this will do is help get the good driving habits in where they ought to be, which is at the very beginning. It'll help make sure that when they do get behind the wheel, they have more confidence. I think it'll give more confidence to the parents and others who participate in the driving supervision with the teen. And with your indulgence, Mr. Chair, I'd also like to propose an author's amendment to require that a driving school provide a driving log to the students so that they can document the required 50 hours of supervised driving practice during this period. The evidence is very overwhelming that time behind the wheel is the best thing that we can do to improve safety and reduce the kind of tragedies that are all too common with these teen drivers. So with that, I would respectfully request your aye vote. And finally, Senator, I'd be happy to take the committee's suggested amendment
the age of 21.
that makes a uniform age for purposes
So
of the
that will be two amendments that you will accept as author's amendments.
Yes, sir.
Members of the committee, shall we first, let's get the witnesses in favor, and then we'll go to Senator Huff. Witness in support.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the members Gabe Robertson, representing the Driving School Association of California, in strong support of AB 2464. After decades of teaching teens how to safely operate a motor vehicle, instructors have found that we develop a safer, more confident teen driver if we teach 6 hours of consecutive training over a short period of time. This gives the teen the ability to operate a vehicle in almost any situation and increases materially their confidence. Their parents recognize this confidence and are more willing to practice with them, and we think that this kind of training process will cause more parents to give more practice to their teens and hopefully attain the 50 hours of required practice by law. Contrary, we find that if teens spread out the training over a series of months between lessons, they don't retain the training they received, and if they're practicing with parents and come back to the instructor finds himself trying to correct bad driving habits passed on unintentionally to the teens by the parent. Parents are amazed at the progress their teens make under 6 hours of consecutive training and feel it's a better way to train their teens. And we do ask you for an aye vote.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Louis Brown on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association in support of the bill.
Mr. Chairman, members, Ralph Fine for the California Fire Chiefs Association, Fire Districts Association, also in support.
Are there other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Senator Huff, you wish to add?
Yeah, let me just understand. So what this is requiring would be 6 hours with, what's the definition of the agency that would do it, professional or whatever?
Do you want to speak to that?
Yes, professional driving instructors licensed by the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Okay, and it can be anywhere in the 50 hours? It has to be on the front end of it?
Front end.
Okay. And then the rest of the time is certified or verified by, what are the qualifications?
Parent, somebody above, well, we're going to make the age uniform now at 21.
It was 25 or something?
It was, and well, it was all over the map for different situations. So some cases 18, some cases 25. The committee has suggested we make it uniform at 21.
What's the requirement now for professional training?
You receive 6 hours, but that 6 hours can take place in any way. It could take place at the very end. It could take place in 1 hour increments.
Just front-loading it in the front to try to get
front-loading.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other members wish to address? Bill's been moved as amended by Senator Pavley. Would you like to close?
Respectfully request your aye vote.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Huff?
Aye.
Huff, aye. Ashburn?
No.
Ashburn, no. DeSaulnier? Aye. DeSaulnier, aye. Harmon? Aye. Harmon, aye. Kehoe?
Aye.
Kehoe, aye. Oropesa? Pavley?
Aye.
Pavley, aye. Semidian? 6-1.
Bill has 6 votes, sufficient for passage, but we're going to place it on call for the absent member. Assembly Member Bradford. He's fast asleep. Calling him once, calling him twice, that's it.
On that, I'm like just...
Assembly Member, have you enjoyed your week in front of this committee?
This has been entertaining, to say the least, and informative.
Right.
It's been very entertaining, yes. Senator runs a great hearing.
You're going to dry it here. Would you like a lawn? I don't know what's in the bill, but have the amendments. Losing me quick.
They're not in print, no, but they're
So which we talk to the others?
they have been emailed to all of us. But anyway, scanners and additional files. I think that's the best we can do.
Welcome.
Thank you, Senator. I'm presenting AB 2567. Mr. Chair, members, first let me begin by accepting the committee's suggested amendments to further strengthen the privacy protection mentioned in comment 6 of the analysis. The 3 amendments are ensuring a timely and complete destruction of images whether or not final citation is issued. The destruction of an image if taken on the street at a time not designated for street sweeping and any additional reporting requirements. AB 2567 allows local public agencies to install automatic parking enforcement systems on local public agency owned and operated street sweepers for the purpose of photographing no parking violations to prevent full street sweeping. This is not a state mandate in any way. It just only allows local jurisdictions to take advantage of local new technology and help in increasing environmental health and safety of our communities. As you know, street sweeping takes place on a regular occurrence, but when you have cars parked on the street, it prevents as many as 4 to 5 spaces from being swept at any time, creating a greater hazard in our communities. There's been a survey by Department of Public Works in D.C. that states 10 pounds of oil and grease, 3 pounds of nitrogen and phosphorus, and up to 2 pounds of heavy metals are removed for every mile swept by street sweeping. This bill is modeled after AB 101 by Assemblyman Ma in 2007 that authorizes automatic parking enforcement on public transit vehicles. This bill contains additional privacy protections and further limits the scope and image captured only to the license plates of the vehicle. Recent amendments to the bill require time and date stamped directly on the photo. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Assemblyman, this bill is almost identical to a bill that Assemblymember Eng, which I supported last year, and I applaud you for doing the additional issue, amendments regarding the additional privacy issues. I'm just wondering, why do you think this bill is going to be signed by the governor this year after vetoing almost the exact same bill?
We have been.
Granted, this is a stronger bill.
It's definitely a stronger bill and addresses some of the privacy concerns that were mentioned last year or raised last year, and we've been in continued conversation with the governor's staff addressing those remaining issues that existed last year.
Okay. Witnesses in support.
Good evening. Michael Martinez of Manette Phelps & Phillips here on behalf of ACS Affiliated Computer Systems. In strong support of this bill, I agree with a lot of what the author had said with regard to the environmental benefits of this bill, and really moving forward, trying to strike that balance between the use of technology and the privacy concerns expressed by other individuals out there in the community. So respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you. And I apologize, and also the California Public Parking Association was not physically able to be here, but they asked me to also state that they're in strong support of this bill.
Other witnesses in support?
Steve Wallach on behalf of the City and County of San Francisco. We also strongly support this bill and urge your support.
Witnesses in opposition?
Hang on their side. Come on, babe. Put something in the water. I'm a little excited. Good evening, Valerie Small Navarro with the American Civil Liberties Union, and I'd like to thank the author, his staff, and your staff, Mr. Chair, for all the work that's gone into this. We still, unfortunately, remain in opposition. We have
the amendments come closer to?
Yes, they're addressing. They address many of our concerns, but the overarching issue about the privacy of individuals in our society, I think the governor raised that in his veto message, and the proliferation of cameras as a general concern is also a concern that we have. In addition, I think it's important to note that the MAW bill that was referenced earlier, we're not going to get the report back on that bill until 2011. So it's kind of, we're putting a little bit the cart before the horse and moving ahead with a more sophisticated technology in this bill. In addition, I think it's important to note that this bill authorizes the entire state of California. Any city within the state could employ this technology, whereas we only have 2 cities that are currently using it, Chicago and Washington, D.C., and one of those has already come offline. So I think it is a new technology. We need to be very careful, and I suggest that we still haven't gotten the data back from that report, as I mentioned earlier. So we're still in opposition despite all the hard work that's gone into this.
Senator Kehoe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just tell me which city came offline and why, if you know.
My understanding, I believe, and maybe the staff Chicago can help me. And the issue, as I understand it, was that they felt it cost too much money to actually employ this technology, and so they pulled it offline.
I think our staff can respond.
I did read a number of news clips. I tried to contact staff in Chicago and was unsuccessful, but according to some of the news clips, there was also a question of state law. The city had moved ahead, and it was not clear that state law allowed it, so I think they pulled back.
That's Mr. Bradford's bill.
For California, you would need a law as well.
Yes, I would concur with that, with what the consultant and what also Valerie had said.
Question, Mr. Chairman. Senator Ashburn.
So, of the author, we already have legislation that authorized a pilot in San Francisco. The report is due back March 1st of next year. I mean, that's right around the corner. Why would we not want to have the report based on a pilot and then talk about some authorizing legislation?
That's a good question, but I think at this time when cities are missing the opportunity to keep our streets safe and clean from debris, oils, the nitrogens, and the materials that are left, I think it's wise to take advantage of this right now. I think with the new technology, I think it's safer. We're put in the provisions that will clearly limit the photography to only the license plate. So I just think it's a great opportunity right now with limited resources in cities to capture these violators and help keep our communities and streets safe and clean.
Mr. Chairman, I hadn't planned to follow up, but what this authorizes is taking a picture of a car parked in violation.
In violation.
Right. It doesn't move the car. It doesn't make street sweeping facilitated any better necessarily until the car is removed, which the local jurisdiction already has authority to do that. If a car is in the way, it's parked illegally, they can take actions to remove it so that sweeping. So the idea that somehow you're going to sweep more and therefore create a safer environment, I'm not sure how a camera taking a picture enhances that.
It's the missed opportunities right now because I spent 12 years as a local elected official, and one of the biggest complaints we heard from residents was the fact that on street sweeping days, those areas were missed because folks clearly did not move their cars because most cities don't have the resources or time to go along and cite those cars. But I assure you, after one citation, usually those folks will not be in violation and leave their cars there. But these are missed opportunities, and it leaves debris. All the catch basins are now being cluttered by all the debris that's left behind when you miss street sweeping. One car space is equivalent to about 5 spaces being missed.
Senator Harmon.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this bill. I was supportive of a similar bill that we heard a year or so ago, and I can just relate. It's a cost-saving feature that just I can describe for you the process that Huntington Beach, my hometown, uses. I was on city council when we adopted street sweeping on a regular basis, twice a month. And we had a street sweeper come by, and then right behind the street sweeper is a separate vehicle, brand new city-owned vehicle, the full-time city employee driving the truck, and that's the person that writes the citation. The street sweeper goes around the illegally parked car, and then the fellow, lady, whoever driving the citation vehicle stops and writes them a ticket. So that cost of having that full-time employee plus the the cost of the vehicle is a huge expense to the cities. It happens, every single day, not 30 days a month, but close to it. And then you have the situation where the person writing the citation gets behind the sweeper, and so there'll be maybe 4 vehicles in a row or within a block or so, and the street sweeper's now on the next street over, and so they'll skip and not write a citation for vehicle number 2 and 3 and 4 because the enforcement vehicle has to go around to the next street and catch up with the street sweeper. This is so much simpler and so much easier and so cost efficient. It's just the only thing to do. And all due respect to the representative from the American Civil Liberties Union, I just don't think it's any intrusion that is significant on a person's right to privacy. So I'm a strong supporter of this. There have been additional protections built into this newly drafted bill compared to the one we saw before that the governor vetoed, and I'm a strong supporter of it. prepared to move the bill, Mr. Chair.
Senator Hunt, and then Senator Kehoe.
Yeah, I just want to respond sort of to my colleague, Senator Ashburn, who said that they already have the ability to move the vehicle. Well, that's true, but the reality is if they get that fee, they're not going to be parking there, or we'll remind them not to be parking there the next time. And having served on local government for 9 years, it was a problem. And as we have these mandates from MPDES to clean up our streets, you got these parked cars there, you can't get it clean, and so you do have these gaps. And at a time when we keep taking more and more money from local government, this is a more cost-effective way to do the enforcement. You almost had me, Senator Ashburn, on that pilot program going already. But I think because of the budget shortage, I would be in favor of this because it does have a sunset unless things have changed, 2015 or so. Then it sunsets, so we can take a look at it. I think it's a reasonable way to see if it's actually working, maybe on a little bigger scale.
Senator Kehoe. No. Senator Kehoe.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to support the bill, but I do want to hear from the ACLU because she's been trying to respond to the last couple of comments.
Through the chair.
Yes, the chair.
A role in this.
Yes, you do.
Don't worry, Mr. Chair. We love you.
just
all right.
Just very briefly, I just wanted to note that it's not just a photograph. What we're talking about is a system, a license recognition system that takes a scan, not a photograph, downloads that information into a database, and then checks it again. There is a process. The bill requires that the DMV take a look at it, but then it goes to the information then flows to the DMV to verify who the person is, and then comes back. And so I think there are a lot of little pieces in here that need to be looked at carefully. So I just wanted people to understand that we're not just talking about a photograph of a license plate, and these database questions are very important to take a look at. If the government is collecting photographs of our license plates, what happens then? Who gets the access? Those kinds of issues.
Exactly.
Yes, it says they are destroyed, but the question is still who gets access.
You asked the question.
Right. No, that's correct, and and I appreciate that amendment that was taken.
Mr. Chairman, this is the same technology that's being used on toll roads as well as the red light cameras. So it's no new technology. It's the same that's been used in.
You're very lucky, Senator Simitian isn't here.
But I mean, as far as the recognition,
I think we have the same issues around privacy around those that are used on toll roads. So it's not just this issue. You've raised an issue that this committee is very concerned about, and that's why I'm glad to hear that with the committee consultant, Mr. Stivers, working with you, we've begun to deal with these privacy issues, which are very serious. And with that, I'll entertain a motion. The bill's been already moved by Senator Harmon. The return of Senator Harmon, it's strong and it's powerful. As amended?
Yes.
And it's double referred to Rules Committee. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Huff. Huff, aye. Ashburn.
No.
Ashburn, no. DeSaulnier.
Aye.
DeSaulnier, aye. Harmon.
Aye.
Harmon, aye. Kehoe.
Aye.
Kehoe, aye. Oropeza. Pavley.
Aye.
Pavley, aye. Semidian. 6-1.
Bill has 6 votes sufficient for passage. We're going to leave it open for the absent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members.
And I hope you've enjoyed your week with us.
I have. Thank you.
Gaines.
Mr. Gaines, Assemblymember Gaines. We have only 2 more, Bill. 2 more.
Thank you, Chair Lowenthal. Appreciate
Pleasure to see you.
the opportunity. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, AB 2704 simply seeks to protect funding to keep roads clear of snow above the snow line. Last year, 400 inches of snow fell in parts of the Sierra, which is more than 33 feet of snow. Even in drought years, a 2-day storm can dump between 1 and 3 feet of snow, making roads completely impassable. This causes a huge problem for more than 23,000 residents of South Lake Tahoe and 16,000 plus residents in Truckee and other parts of the Sierra. For nearly 30 years, the small towns, cities, and counties above the snow line have relied on a relatively small amount of state assistance to keep clear the local streets and roads. Residents need to get to work, children need to get to school. This bill simply states that regardless of other budget action, the allocation to cover snow removal costs shall continue. I have with me here today supporters from various different areas of the Sierra. Hugh Bauer representing Truckee and Mammoth, Doug Houston representing South Lake Tahoe, and Paul Smith representing RCRC.
Witnesses in support.
Mr. Chair, members, Hugh Bauer on behalf of the town of Truckee and the town of Mammoth Lakes. As Assemblymember Gaines notes, this is a matter of some importance to us. Local governments like the state have been struggling to balance their budgets over the last several years. As part of the budget balancing strategy, legislatures opted to redirect scarce local government revenues, local government funds. During last year's budget process, you might remember the legislature considered the redirection of highway user tax account, funds otherwise intended for local street and road maintenance. If that had occurred, funds used by communities in snow country would have had snow removal funding cut off. As Assemblymember Gaines notes, if funding for snow removal is taken away, it would devastate our communities. AB 2704 just simply gives communities in snow country the assurance that roads will be kept clear of snow during the winter months, and we therefore ask for your support.
Other witnesses in support?
Mr. Chair and members, I really don't have anything to add on top of that. Doug Houston with the City of South Lake Tahoe, and I'm encouraging your support. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Are there any other witnesses in support?
Mr. Chairman, members, Paul Smith with the Regional Council of Rural Counties, also in strong support of this bill.
And Tom Renfrey on behalf of the Board of Supervisors of Siskiyou County in support. Thanks.
Just before I go to Senator Kehoe, are there any witnesses in opposition? Senator Kehoe.
Well, I guess my basic concern is I hear you on snow removal. It sounds like it's a critical issue for those communities that have such heavy snowfall, as are so many other needs in every community. And at this point, I don't understand, the rationale for protecting snow removal versus all the other needs in the state. Even in the highway users account. So as a policy matter, I fail to see the benefit. And if you have something to add to that, aside from the fact that snow removal is important in your community, in the big picture, statewide, how do you see this working?
Senator Kehoe, if I might just also, from the chair's point, before they answer this, just say that while everything that you say is a legitimate and reasonable question to ask, I would like to point out that this bill is non-binding on the legislature. No matter what we do today, the legislature still can remove that in their budget process.
Then what's the point if I can ask?
You can ask that too.
All right. Well, then maybe you could. It's a two-part question, then, Mr. Gaines.
I think we're just trying to
make a point that there's real value in terms of snow removal, and I would treat
Like
it
a resolution?
separate. Well, at least a suggestion that if there's an opportunity, we obviously want to save those dollars, but I would treat it differently than regular road maintenance. These are essential services that this
It's more of an
community needs to
emergency
keep this
framework.
economy going.
I hear what you're saying, but it's not a resolution, it's a bill. And so even a
I think
non-binding,
we've taken language within the legislation that budget would always be a prioritization over this piece of legislation. I thought we had clarified that.
That isn't given.
well, I think your heart's in the right place,
Okay.
but I don't think the bill is.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Fine. Again, the bill isn't. Again, I would say that the bill is. It may diminish its importance, but the bill is non-binding on the legislature. I'm just saying what the reality is. Well, what can I tell you? Is there a motion to pay?
I'll move this bill.
Senator Ashburn moves the bill, which may be good, may not be so good at this moment. Would you like to close?
I would just urge an aye vote. Thank you for clarifying the fact that it is non-binding. And I do look at it in a different light because of the fact that while we can often delay the maintenance of roads, when you have a storm, you've got to remove that snow.
Again, I will say that I agree with there are many, many needs, and the legislature needs to deal with those needs, but because it's non-binding, I will support the bill. Secretary, please call the roll.
Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Huff, excuse me. Huff, aye. Ashburn.
Aye.
Ashburn, aye. DeSaulnier.
Aye.
DeSaulnier, aye. Harmon. Harmon, aye. Kehoe.
No.
Kehoe, no. Oropeza. Pavley. Semidion. 5-1.
Bill has 5 votes sufficient for passage. We'll hold the roll open for the absent members.
Okay.
We
Thank you
have
very much.
one more bill, a Senate concurrent resolution, and I'm going to present it, and Senator Huff is going to be the chair. SCR number. I had a witness, but they had to catch a plane.
Oh my God.
I understand.
We're doing away with more free parking?
We're not doing away with free parking today. We've done away with that bill.
Feel free to go ahead and present, and remember we do give extra credit for short presentations.
Oh, yeah. Chair. Okay, this is internet access in affordable housing, members. Having access to the internet has quickly become the key to economic success in the United States. Children, youngsters use the internet for everything. Parents use the internet. That's how we find jobs. We know the world has changed in the last 5 to 10 years. What this resolution does is to encourage all state and local affordable housing lenders to promote free internet access to the residents of affordable housing. The costs are small. There are nonprofits such as One Economy Foundation that can help cover these costs. The benefits are huge by providing easy access to the internet for low-income families. We can make affordable housing even more of a ladder to success than it already is. And really what we're doing is we're requesting state and local multifamily housing lending agencies to align their policies on the provision of free internet access to those which TCAC is already developed a number of years ago and already encourages them to do it. And now we're going out and saying, we want you as a resolution to do this also, to align your policies with the Tax Credit Allocation Committee. Non-binding, and I urge an aye vote. And I have no witnesses in support because they left.
Are there any unsolicited witnesses in support in the audience? Any witnesses in opposition?
Move the resolution.
Okay, we have a motion. Do you care to close?
It's a wonderful presentation by the author, whoever he or she may be. And I urge an aye vote.
All right, please call the roll.
Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Huff.
No.
Huff, no. Ashburn.
What's short, though?
Ashburn, no. DeSaulnier.
Yeah, it was short.
Kehoe, aye.
There he goes again.
DeSaulnier, aye. Harmon?
No.
Harmon, no. Kehoe?
Aye.
Kehoe, aye. Oropeza? Pavley?
Aye.
Pavley, aye. Semidion? 4-3.
And we'll keep that open. I'm sure some of your colleagues will be coming back here to add on.
We have some more.
What a way to end. It's so much
Yes, we
fun.
have
We
a
should
number
go.
of bills that are on the consent calendar, members.
Mr. Chairman, before we take up the consent calendar, I'd like to ask a question of the chair concerning the committee's position on the naming of highways. Do we have a policy
Yes,
in the?
we do. Yes,
Could
we
you?
have.
I
We
think
actually had a long discussion, and in the analysis, it lists the new committee policy. We have actually spent some time on ensuring that to come up with a policy. Senator Oropeza earlier this year asked us to. We drafted it, and the committee as a full adopted this policy.
Could you remind me what the policy is, or is it?
You got to be dead. You have to have committee. It has to have. You have to be someone who has passed on. It has to have consensus in the community. It has to be no longer. It cannot be someone who's a highway that's already named for someone else. And it has to be no longer the largest section than 5 miles. It
has to be an author or the co-author.
You have the author or co-author of the measure must represent the district in which the facility is located. The person who's honored must have provided extraordinary public service or some exemplary contribution to the public good. And I think that's it. I think those are the ones that the committee adopted.
That's the high points.
And then there's many others that were.
You can go to his website.
No, it's actually in the back of the binder, of everybody's binder.
Yes.
But we would be, we have had numbers of discussions on these, and
Can we have an assessment of how many miles of unnamed highways?
there are none left in California.
There's only 5.
Old Grove Highway?
That's what we need to know. That's good.
And what about the?
Yes.
Was there discussion when the policy was adopted about deferring these types of decisions to the California Transportation Commission rather than having the legislature spend
I
its
did a bill
valuable
on that
time?
and was vetoed by the governor. Actually, that's exactly what this committee wanted to do, and we had that said. And I agree with you, and I agree with you completely that this is I'll name it for you. Don't worry. A difficult thing, and we should not be doing this as in the legislature. And there should be a process by which either Caltrans or the Department of or the CTC does it.
Mr. Chairman, I would respectfully request that the question on the consent calendar be divided, and that we vote separately on file items 4, 5, 31, 32, 33, 35, and 36. And I'll be voting no on those if the question is divided. I don't think it's inappropriate. Well, I'll talk about it when I get a chance.
4, 5, 31, 32.
Which ones are we doing?
4.
I'd like to vote separately on 4, 5, 31, 32, 33, 35, and 36.
31,
32, 33, 35,
35, and
36.
All right, let's call the roll on first the consent calendar on items number 1, 3. Let's keep going. 1, 3, 13, 14, 17, 19, 21, 30, and I believe that's it. Let's call the roll on those items on the consent calendar.
I have an inquiry through the chair, if I may. To Senator Harmon, 4 and 5 are also naming ones.
They're on it. They're on it.
They're on your list?
They're on the list.
Oh, okay, then I missed, that
Right.
was my
I'll
mistake.
go over that list. Who's on the Harmon list? Okay. These are the items. Now we're voting on. I believe the items that were originally that were not called out for a separate vote by Senator Harmon. So, that starts with item number 1 and 3 and goes through. These are the ones now. Please call the roll.
Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal. I. Huff.
Aye.
Huff. I. Ashburn.
Aye.
Ashburn. I. DeSaulnier. DeSaulnier. I. Harmon.
Aye.
Harmon. I. Kehoe. Kehoe. I. Oropeza. Pavley.
Aye.
Pavley. I. Semidian. Sorry. 7-0.
Well, that has 7 votes. We'll hold that open for the absent member. Now we're going to go to items number 4, 5, 31, 32, 33, 35, and 36.
Are we calling them separately?
And we're calling also on the consent. We'll call those separately, please. Please call the. Oh, Senator.
Just to expedite things, you might want to consider if you choose to take one roll call, and then we can substitute the roll on the remaining, and then Senator Harmon gets to cast his no vote as he chooses.
Either that or you can call them all together as
I was just
one.
going to call. We've already voted on the other one, so let's just. So let's just do them all as a lump. These are the ones that are left. We'll do these as a lump. Technical term, lump is a scientific term.
Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal. I. Huff.
Aye.
Huff. I. Ashburn. Ashburn. I. DeSaulnier.
Aye.
DeSaulnier. I. Harmon.
No.
Harmon. No. Kehoe.
Aye.
Kehoe. I. Oropeza. Pavley.
Aye.
Pavley. I. Semidian. 6-1.
That bill has 6. The others have 6 votes. We'll place that on call for the absent members. Let's lift the. Well, let's see. Everybody's here. Let's wait for 2 minutes. Let's. The Senator Semidian.
I have a question.
I think I'm on everything, aren't I?
I'm not.
No. Let's go through. Let's just see if Senator Semidian is here. Yes. Oh, he is. Quickly start with that.
Carrie. So those bills are those ones that we just called. They're no longer consent, right?
No.
Tom, in the future, since we were, why don't you pull these off consent and make them? Well, then you're making a point. That may be what you want to do. If you don't want us to do that, or maybe ask us to.
Okay.
I know, but I'm just saying, if really, maybe we'll work on another bill. Maybe we can do it the Harmon Lowenthal bill this time. All right, we're going to open the roll on the, and we're going to start now with item number 1, which is the consent calendar, but it's consent calendar 1. We're voting now on items number 1, 3, 13, 14, 17, 19, 21, 30. Those are the items on half the items on the consent calendar, which are not the naming resolutions. Call the absent members. The vote now is.
Okay. Current vote is 7-0. Chair I, Vice Chair I, Oropeza, Semidian. Semidian I, 8-0.
Now we're going to call the roll on the consent calendar for those items that were naming resolutions. That's item number 4, 5, 31, 32, 33, 35, and 36.
Current vote 6-1. Chair I, Vice Chair I, Oropeza, Semidian. Current vote 6-1.
Vote 6 ayes, 1 no. That the consent, that part of the consent calendar passes. Next, Item number 2, Lowenthal SCR 90 affordable housing, and that's in-home internet service accessibility.
Current vote 4-3, Chair aye, Vice Chair no. Oropesa? Semidion? Semidion aye, 5-3.
The bill has 5 votes. It's out. Next is item number 6, Assemblymember De Leon, motor carriers.
Current vote 5-0, Chair aye, Vice Chair aye. Harmon?
Aye.
Harmon aye, Kehoe?
Aye.
Kehoe aye, Oropesa? Semidion? Semidion aye, 8-0.
Bill is out.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, it requires 5 votes to move out of the committee.
Yes, 5 votes to move out of the committee. Next, AB 498, Hayashi.
Current vote 5-0, Chair aye, Vice Chair aye. Harmon?
Aye.
Harmon aye, Kehoe?
Aye.
Kehoe aye, Oropesa? Semidion? Semidion aye, 8-0. I will.
That bill is out. Next bill, AB 584, Huber, neighborhood electric vehicles.
Current vote 5-0, Chair aye, Vice Chair aye. Harmon?
Aye.
Harmon aye, Kehoe?
No.
Kehoe no, Oropesa? Semidion? Semidion aye, 7-1.
Bill has 7 votes. Bill is out. Next bill, AB 589, Assemblymember Cook, driver's license and identification cards.
Current vote 1-2. Chair no. Vice Chair has not voted. Huff?
Aye.
Huff aye, Ashburn? DeSaulnier?
No.
DeSaulnier no. Kehoe?
No.
Kehoe no. Oropesa? Pavley?
No.
Pavley no. 2-5.
The bill fails. Reconsideration is granted. Next bill, AB 1204, Huber.
Current vote 5-1. Chair aye, Vice Chair aye. Ashburn? Kehoe?
Aye.
Kehoe aye. Oropesa? 6-1.
Bill has 6 votes. That bill is out. Next bill, AB 1224, Eng, high occupancy toll lanes.
Current vote 6-0. Chair aye, Vice Chair aye. DeSaulnier?
Aye.
DeSaulnier aye. Oropesa? Pavley?
Aye.
Pavley aye, 8-0.
Next bill, Jeffries, specially constructed vehicles.
Current vote
AB 1740.
Sorry. Current vote 2-4.
Kit cars. That was pulled. On the request of the author.
Current vote 2-4. Chair no. Vice Chair aye. Harmon?
Aye.
Harmon aye. Oropesa? Semidion? Semidion no. 3-5.
Bill fails. Reconsideration is granted. Without objection. Next, Valines, AB 1781, neighborhood electric vehicles.
Current vote 5-1. Chair aye, Vice Chair aye. DeSaulnier?
Aye.
DeSaulnier aye. Oropesa? Semidion? Semidion aye. 7-1.
Bill is out. Next bill, AB 1793, Saldana, common interest developments, artificial turf.
Current vote 3-3. Chair aye, Vice Chair no. DeSaulnier?
Aye.
DeSaulnier aye. Oropesa? Semidion? Excuse me? Current vote 4-3. Chair aye, Vice Chair no. Oropesa? Semidion? Semidion aye. 5-3.
Bill has 5 votes. Bill is out. Next bill, AB 1927, Knight, Real Property, Common Interest Development.
Current vote 5-0. Chair I, Vice Chair I. DeSaulnier.
Aye.
DeSaulnier I. Kehoe.
I'm sorry, which item is it?
Knight, the one.
Aye.
Kehoe I. Oropeza. Semidian. Semidian I. 8-0.
That bill is out. Next bill, Lowenthal, Vehicle Parking.
As amended, current vote 5-0.
AB
Chair
2067.
As amended, current vote 5-0. Chair I, Vice Chair I. DeSaulnier.
Aye.
DeSaulnier I. Kehoe.
Aye.
Kehoe I. Oropeza. Semidian.
Aye.
Semidian I. 8-0.
Bill has 8 votes. The bill is out. Next bill, AB 2245, Assemblymember Hill, Aftermarket Horns.
Current vote 3-3. Chair I, Vice Chair no. DeSaulnier.
Aye.
DeSaulnier I. Oropeza. Semidian.
Aye.
Semidian I. 5-3.
Bill is out. Next bill, Emerson, AB 2461.
As amended.
As amended.
Current vote 6-0.
Yes, by the chair.
Current vote 6-0. Chair I, Vice Chair I. DeSaulnier.
Aye.
DeSaulnier I. Oropeza. Semidian. Seven zero.
Bill has 7 votes. That bill is out. Next bill is AB 2464, Huffman, Provisional Licensing.
As amended, current vote 6-1. Chair I, Vice Chair I. Oropeza. Semidian. Semidian I. 7-1.
Next bill, AB 2567, Bradford, Parking Violations, Digital Photograph Recordings.
As amended.
As amended.
Current vote 6-1. Chair I, Vice Chair I. Oropeza. Semidian. Semidian I. 7-1.
Bill is out. Next bill, AB 2701 or 01, State Historical Building Code.
Current vote 5-0. Chair I, Vice Chair I. Ashburn. DeSaulnier.
Aye.
DeSaulnier I. Oropeza. Pavley. 6-0.
Next bill, AB 2704, Gains, Local Government Funds.
Current vote 5-1. Chair I, Vice Chair I. Oropeza. Pavley. Semidian. Semidian I. 6-1.
6-1, members, that concludes our work for the day. Thank you all for staying.
Item 34?
Item 34 was pulled.
Okay, thank you.